Chapter 784. After returning to Qin City, the first thing Zhao Fu did was to establish 260 system main cities and capture some spirit light indigenous residents and dark demon indigenous residents. Now, Qin City had 880 system main cities, and its strength was terrifying to the extreme. Zhao Fu felt that it was time to do something about the surrounding regions, but after thinking about it, he didn't know what to do. First, he had to find suitable masters for the fish scale, spirit light, and dark demon cities and nurture some top-tier forces. Right now, Zhao Fu had only casually chosen a few people to be city lords, and they were quite weak in battle. Zhao Fu couldn't count on them to fight. Luckily, system main cities spawned many new people every day, so they would only have to wait a few more days to find suitable people and nurture them. In the following days, Zhao Fu felt quite relaxed and went to take a look at the Moria city, which had just become a capital city. As one of the two capital cities in Qin City, the Moria city was continuously expanding in preparation for the increase in population. Zhao Fu could sense that the Moria city was slightly weaker than the Seven Kill City because it didn't have the same pure killing intent as the Seven Kill City, so it was naturally not as powerful. However, the Moria city was a dynasty legacy city, so it had a decent amount of legacy power. It was said that when the Moria city had become a capital city, a massive golden peacock had appeared in the sky, and all of the Moria city's residents had received some of the peacock's power. Apart from the Moria city, there were also general armaments. During this period of time, Qin City had fused with two more general armaments. One was Zhang Han's General Star, the Great Gate Star, and the other was Sun Hanxiang's Voracious Wolf Star. Now, Bai Qi had one, Wang Jian had one, Wei Liao had one, Sima Qiu had one, Zhang Han had one, Meng Kuo had one, Li Mu had one, Bai Shihan had one, and Sun Hanxiang had one. Bai Shihan's was the Seven Murders Star, Sun Hanxiang's was the Voracious Wolf Star, and if he had the Army Destroyer Star, Zhao Fu would be able to gather 3 stars. Last time, when he had gathered 3 stars, Zhao Fu had awakened the Myrtle Star. If the 3 stars gathered again, who knew what would happen? Zhao Fu thought that between Wei Qing and Su Liuyi, one of them would definitely be the Army Destroyer Star. Soon, he would be able to see the 3 stars gather. This made Zhao Fu feel a bit of anticipation. Soon, another month had passed. During that time, Zhao Fu had successfully chosen some suitable people to become city lords, and he had put in a lot of effort to nurture them. Zhao Fu rebuilt the Transrealm Array. It had been a long time since he went to the Land of Inheritance. This time, Zhao Fu had a few main purposes for going outside. The first was to find out about the battles between the Devil Horn Empire and the other factions. This was incredibly important, as the battles between them would decide the survival of the human world. Zhao Fu definitely had to obtain some information so that he could make preparations. The second was to sell the massive amount of equipment that he had obtained. Zhao Fu had obtained 3 billion sets of equipment from the Fish Scale War. Zhao Fu had prepared to sell these in the human world, but because of the natural disasters, he had not been able to sell much. These pieces of equipment were worth 18 billion gold coins, and such a massive amount of wealth could not be underestimated. The third thing was to buy talisman stones. This was something that Qin had been doing all this time. Qin desperately lacked talisman stones, as talisman stones were simply too important to Qin. All kinds of talisman equipment required talisman stones. Qin had bought more than half of China's talisman stones, but Qin still only had 8 million sets of talisman equipment. Qin now had 80 million soldiers, and he had only fulfilled 10% of the requirements. If he wanted to buy a large number of talisman stones, he would have to go outside the Land of Inheritance. This time, Zhao Fu made all sorts of preparations. Because he would not be able to return in a short period of time, he once again used the Transrealm teleportation channel and arrived outside the Land of Inheritance. Because his identity might be discovered by the Kershi Kingdom, Zhao Fu did not dare to take a step into the Kershi Kingdom. There was a massive difference in strength between a kingdom and a kingdom that had not yet established a kingdom. After establishing a kingdom, there would be all sorts of changes. Zhao Fu felt quite envious of this power, But Qin was about to establish a kingdom. He could not go to the Kershi kingdom, but there were other kingdoms. Zhao Fu not only wanted to go to the Grassy Kingdom, but he also wanted to go to the Lontong Kingdom, the Half-Beast Kingdom, and the Elf Kingdom. This time, Zhao Fu planned to open up paths for the various races, and he could not limit himself to the Grassy Kingdom. If he wanted to obtain even more resources, he had to open up all paths. According to the information that Zhao Fu had, the world above the Grassy Kingdom was the Lontong Kingdom. The Half-Beast Kingdom was to the left, and the Elf Kingdom was to the right. The Half-Beast Kingdom was in front of the Dark Demon world, while the Elf Kingdom was in front of the Fish Scale world. The Devil Horn Kingdom was in the world above the Half-Beast Kingdom, so Zhao Fu did not have to worry about this for now and would deal with other matters first. After all, Zhao Fu had the Transrealm teleportation channel and could teleport over super long distances. Without the Heavenly Domain boundary, he did not need the Heavenly Domain heart. A while later, Zhao Fu went to the Moonrest Kingdom next to the Kershi Kingdom. Even though these kingdoms called themselves kingdoms and empires, they were just barony kingdoms. After entering the Moonrest Kingdom, the first thing Zhao Fu did was to find out about the Devil Horn Empire. This was very good news. Before, the Devil Horn Empire, Lontong, Grassy, and Half-Beast kingdoms had been facing off against each other. With how powerful the Devil Horn Empire was, they were not at a disadvantage against the three major races at all. On the other hand, the Lontong, Grassy, and Half-Beast kingdoms were under great pressure. The Devil Horn Empire had once launched a sneak attack and almost destroyed the three races' defenses. Facing the threat of the Devil Horn Empire, the three races felt quite unsettled. Only after more kingdoms joined in did the situation stabilize. More importantly, the White Corpse race, the world above the Devil Horn Empire, was also participating. The White Corpse race was part of the Death race and did not want to participate. However, the Devil Horn Empire had been too arrogant and looked down on everyone, making the White Corpse race feel threatened. The White Corpse race was a world above the Devil Horn Empire, and it was much more powerful than ordinary worlds. With it participating, the Lontong Kingdom, Grassy, and Half-Beast kingdoms felt much less pressure. In the end, the Stone Spirit race next to the Devil Horn Empire also participated. Now, Zhao Fu did not have to worry about the Devil Horn Empire anymore, as it was being suppressed by the five major races. It was facing a massive crisis and did not have the ability to invade other worlds. The Devil Horn Empire's barbaric and domineering attitude was also suppressed by the five major races. It was said that the five major races wanted to invade the Devil Horn Empire together. Now that the Devil Horn Empire was on the defensive, Zhao Fu relaxed. He did not have to worry about the Devil Horn Empire's threat anymore. Chapter 785. With the lesson from last time, Zhao Fu did not choose to work with large merchant groups. Even though they were quite powerful and could help Zhao Fu find what he wanted, they were too big a target and would attract too much attention. This time, Zhao Fu chose to work with smaller merchant groups, and he did not want to make a big move. As such, Zhao Fu chose to buy them at an appropriate time. In the Moonrest Empire, Zhao Fu found a small merchant group called the Clear Moon Financial Group. Zhao Fu would not work with just any small merchant group, so he first had to investigate them. Zhao Fu did not want to work with some black-hearted merchant group, which would cause him to incur losses and not be able to obtain what he wanted. The Clear Moon Financial Group was quite famous in the nearby regions. Even though their business was quite small, they were quite honest and trustworthy. All of their goods were clearly priced, and it was almost impossible to buy fake goods. Zhao Fu was quite satisfied with this, so he chose to work with them. The Clear Moon Financial Group's manager was an elderly man who had stage 3 strength and had been an old soldier. The two sides were able to easily work together, and the entire Clear Moon Financial Group was quite happy to have such a wealthy owner like Zhao Fu. In order to get rid of a large amount of equipment, Zhao Fu used equipment to trade with them. The price was quite low, but Zhao Fu did not care about these small benefits. As long as he could achieve his goal, he would be satisfied. Every week, Zhao Fu would send people to collect talisman stones. The Clear Moon Financial Group only needed to provide a certain amount, and did not need to buy them in bulk to attract attention. After taking care of matters in the Moonrest Empire, Zhao Fu constructed a teleportation channel and headed to the next kingdom, and he found a small merchant group to work with. A few days later, Zhao Fu started working with 30 or so grassy kingdoms, and Zhao Fu headed to the Lontong race, planning to continue using this method. The Lontong race did not have many kingdoms, only around 30 or so. However, all of them were quite powerful, and most new kingdoms would not be a match for them. It was Zhao Fu's first time seeing the Lontong people, and he was quite shocked. The Lontong people's eyes were incredibly beautiful, and they were like two sapphires, incredibly pure and enchanting. Zhao Fu found some small merchant groups and worked with them. Among them, there were more than 20 countries that had reached an agreement. There were also some countries that were more sensitive and special. Some countries even banned foreigners from entering and implemented a completely closed system. There were also some countries that implemented a racial system. People who didn't belong to their country or race would be killed. Since Zhao Fu did not even have the right to enter, he naturally could not find merchant groups to work with. Even if he was lucky, he would be discovered at any moment. As such, Zhao Fu gave up on working with merchant groups from those kingdoms. After taking care of matters in the Lontong and Grassy kingdoms, Zhao Fu headed to the world to the left of the Grassy kingdom, which was the half-beast world. These half-beast people had the bodies of humans and the heads of wild beasts, and they had a tribal system. They were quite ferocious and had a trace of the wildness of wild beasts, and their customs were quite crude and barbaric. However, they were easier to deal with than the human race, and they did not have as many systems and rules as the human race. The prerequisite was that you had to be stronger than them, and as long as you could do that, your life would be smooth sailing. If you were weaker than them, you would be bullied and suppressed, and you might even lose your life. Back then, Zhao Fu found a merchant group in a half-beast city and wanted to work with them. However, this group of people actually wanted to kill Zhao Fu. In the end, they were beaten half to death by Zhao Fu and knelt on the ground, looking as if Zhao Fu was their father. The more barbaric a world was, the more important one's strength was. In the end, Zhao Fu chose to work with them because most half-beast people were like this, and there were no other good choices. Of course, in order to prevent them from betraying him, Zhao Fu set up restrictions in their bodies and gave them some gold as rewards, making them even more obedient. After dealing with the half-beast countries, Zhao Fu spent more than half a month in the Legacy Land. Finally, there was the elf world. Zhao Fu's interactions with the elves were much more elegant and kind. However, some were more enthusiastic to any race, while others were more indifferent. There were also some that forbade races other than the elf from entering. Zhao Fu was quite familiar with the elves, because Qin had many elves. Daisy and Asani were quite close to Zhao Fu, and he understood their personalities. In terms of speaking, Zhao Fu was quite elegant and could chat with the elves. In the elf world, Zhao Fu found various merchant groups to work with. After doing all of this, he spent about a month outside the Legacy Land. However, even though it took a long time, everything went well without any accidents. By working with them, Qin could earn 16 million talisman stones per month, and the price of the talisman stones was slightly lower than the original price. 16 million talisman stones per month greatly satisfied Qin's needs and ensured that he would not lack talisman stones. Now that the task was complete, Zhao Fu planned to return to the human world. However, he suddenly heard that a prince of the Frost Moon Empire had been poisoned, and whoever could cure him would receive a world tree seed, a great city, and 1 million gold coins. This made Zhao Fu feel quite tempted, mainly because the world tree seed was something that couldn't be bought with money. Normally, the Elf Kingdom would never leak this information. If he could use the world tree as a tree of life, the water of life would not be crude water of life, but at least intermediate water of life. Intermediate water of life would be more than 10 times more effective than crude water of life, and it was very important to Qin. Zhao Fu thought about it and decided to give it a try. The Frost Moon Empire had a good reputation in the outside world, and it welcomed all races. It was quite kind, and there were also humans living in it. There was no bloodthirst or discrimination. If it was a place that discriminated against other races and enforced a racial system, Zhao Fu would not go. It was possible that he would lose his life. When Zhao Fu arrived at the Frost Moon Empire's royal city, it was already packed with tens of thousands of people. Even if the World Tree Seed was useless to ordinary people, a great city and 1 million gold coins were enough to attract countless people. AI. Looking at the sea of people, Zhao Fu sighed and wondered when it would be his turn. Within the royal palace, a tall and slender elf man with a noble aura suddenly coughed up a large mouthful of black blood as he lay on the bed. This caused everyone around him to feel quite shocked, as someone who looked like a doctor quickly went up to check and gave out orders with an unsightly expression. An order was given. The prince's condition had worsened, and he urgently needed a doctor to detoxify him. Those who were confident could enter the royal palace, but those who were not confident and didn't have the ability to immediately leave, or else the Frost Moon Empire would severely punish them. Chapter 786. This caused Zhao Fu to hesitate, but thinking about the effects of the 10,000 poison divine cauldron, Zhao Fu decided to give it a try. In the end, 96 people entered the palace. Of course, they all had to be incredibly powerful to dare to enter the palace, or else none of them would be able to escape. Zhao Fu pretended to be quite ordinary and silently followed behind them. Following this, they walked into a dazzlingly beautiful palace. The guard who led them and told them to wait here, and they obediently waited. However, the people who came here were all very powerful, and they gave off arrogant auras and looked down on the people around them. Zhao Fu kept a low profile and did not do anything as he silently waited. However, a little fatty suddenly came over and said in a small voice, "You're quite an expert on the outside. Speaking of which, do you really have a way to cure that prince's poison? This isn't an ordinary poison. It's a poison that even the Frost Moon Empire can't cure." Zhao Fu felt quite speechless. Indeed, out of everyone present, only he was wearing a cloak that covered his face, making him seem quite conspicuous. "I don't know any medicine, but I have something that can cure this poison," Zhao Fu said to the little fatty. This little fatty was not an elf, but rather a human. He most likely came from another world and spoke an elf language. You don't know any medicine, and yet you dare to come? If that thing of yours doesn't work, you'll be in trouble. However, now that you know me, there won't be a problem." The little fatty looked quite surprised before saying in a pleased tone. Hearing this, Zhao Fu asked in confusion, "Then why won't it be a problem if I know you?" The little fatty gave a pleased smile and looked around before coming closer and saying, "I'm from Medicine King World. Are you shocked? I could take you as my little brother. You should know that I don't normally take little brothers. I saw that your aura was quite special, so I reluctantly took you in." "Medicine King World?" Zhao Fu asked in confusion. Hearing Zhao Fu's question, the little fatty was also surprised. He couldn't help but ask, "Have you been staying in the deep mountains all this time? Our Medicine King World has never heard of it. If you knew, our Medicine King World is the world that understands medicine the most in the surrounding 100 or so worlds." "Oh," Zhao Fu replied calmly. He hadn't left the land of inheritance yet, so Zhao Fu naturally wouldn't care about the matters of dozens of worlds away. It was already good enough that he could learn something about the grassy world. Hearing Zhao Fu's calm voice, the little fatty felt quite displeased and asked, "Why aren't you shocked? You should know that people from the Medicine King's world have many holy pills. If you call me Big Brother, I'll reward you with a stage 4 pill." Hearing this little fatty's words, Zhao Fu couldn't help but smack him on the head. This little fatty was only 15 or 16 years old, yet he wanted Zhao Fu to call him Big Brother with a stage 4 pill. He was simply asking to be beaten. The little fatty cried out in pain, and just as he was about to say something, a dignified-looking middle-aged elf brought a few guards with powerful auras into the palace. He sat on a chair made of silver wood and looked at the people below. He instinctively gave off a king's might, causing everyone to lower their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. Sensing this terrifying power, Zhao Fu felt quite shocked. This was the first time he had faced a living king, and his king's power was incredibly pure. His control over King's power was definitely greater than Zhao Fu's. Moreover, his cultivation was definitely at stage 9. With such terrifying cultivation, even without a city lord seal, he would be able to kill a large number of great city lords. If he didn't use any other power, Zhao Fu wouldn't be able to withstand a single attack from him. As such, Zhao Fu quickly lowered his head and acted respectfully like everyone else. At the same time, he hid all of his power. However, the middle-aged elf's gaze fell on Zhao Fu's body, and he slightly smiled as he said, "I never thought that an esteemed guest would come to my kingdom." These words caused everyone present to feel quite confused. They didn't understand what the middle-aged elf meant, and the elf ministers next to him didn't understand why their king would suddenly say such a thing either. Sensing this gaze, Zhao Fu felt that the other party was quite friendly, and he didn't want to attack. He raised his head and prepared to say something. However, the little fatty spoke first and bashfully smiled as he said, "I never thought that I would be discovered so quickly by your majesty from the Medicine King's world." Hearing that the little fatty was from the Medicine King's world, everyone felt quite shocked and looked at him. However, the middle-aged elf didn't reply to the little fatty, and he instead looked at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu could only cup his hands and bow as he said, "I was just passing by and heard that your kingdom's prince had been poisoned, so I came to have a try." Only then did everyone realize that the middle-aged elf was talking to Zhao Fu. However, just who was Zhao Fu for the elf king to act so courteously towards him? The little fatty's eyes widened as he looked at Zhao Fu. He had never thought that Zhao Fu's identity would be so powerful, and he had only felt that Zhao Fu was a bit special. The middle-aged elf smiled as he courteously said, "Esteemed guest, my son's condition is quite serious. Right now, my son's condition is rather serious. Please detoxify my son first. I will entertain you later." Hearing this, Zhao Fu nodded and left with the middle-aged elf, leaving behind a dumbfounded crowd. They could guess that Zhao Fu's identity was incredibly prestigious, or else he wouldn't be treated so courteously by a sovereign. Zhao Fu followed the middle-aged elf to a room, and looking at the elf on the sickbed, he took out the 10,000 poison divine cauldron. The 10,000 poison divine cauldron gave off a faint violet light and floated above the sickbed. The violet light covered the elf young man on the sickbed, and his expression became one of pain as traces of black qi started to come out of his body. Zhao Fu let out a sigh of relief, and after a while, no more black qi came out of his body. Zhao Fu put away the 10,000 poison divine cauldron and found that it had evolved. It seemed that this poison was not simple at all. After all, Zhao Fu's 10,000 poison divine cauldron had refined more than half of the poisons in the human world to become a level 2 sane armament. Seeing that the elf on the sickbed had recovered, the middle-aged elf looked quite delighted and walked over to examine him before smiling and cupping his hands toward Zhao Fu as he said, "Thank you, sir, for saving my son." Zhao Fu humbly replied. Following this, the middle-aged elf held a large banquet, wanting to properly entertain Zhao Fu. Those who had entered the palace before him were also invited. Zhao Fu accepted the banquet and asked for his reward. Just as he was about to leave, the little fatty rushed over and hugged Zhao Fu's leg as he said, "Big bro, take me as your little brother." Zhao Fu pushed him away in disdain, but the little fatty was unwilling to give up and stuck to Zhao Fu again. After Zhao Fu left, the elf ministers asked seriously, "Your Majesty, is this true? Is this true? That person's identity is so prestigious." Chapter 787. After the middle-aged elf spoke, the elf minister's expressions became even more serious. After all, emperors represented the peak of the heaven-awakened world, and barony kingdoms like them did not even have the right to carry their shoes. Even though they did not want to admit it, this was reality. In front of an empire, a barony kingdom like this was just an ant that could be casually stomped to death. However, why would such a prestigious person appear in a remote region? Thinking about that, the middle-aged elf's heart sank, and he gave the order to pay attention to the surrounding worlds. The ministers immediately went to do this, as they understood His Majesty's intentions. An emperor has descended. Something shocking must have happened. On the way, Zhao Fu looked at the little fatty, who was hugging his leg, helplessly, and said, "Are you coming or not?" The little fatty vigorously shook his head and begged, "Big bro, please take me in. I can already refine stage 5 medicinal pills, and I'll help you refine pills every day. I'll even help you with odd jobs." Hearing his words, Zhao Fu felt quite surprised. He had never thought that the little fatty would have such skills. Chapter 788. Yitsong looked at the 5 ancestors and coldly harumphed. The Night Dynasty didn't attack them, yet they dared to attack the Night Dynasty. Since they're being heartless, don't blame me for being merciless. I'll definitely fight this battle and see who lives and who dies. Hearing this, one of the ancestors could not help but say, "Yitsong, we're at a great disadvantage this time. This time, we're at a great disadvantage. We have less than half of the other side's forces, and we lack top-tier forces. We only have 70 or so city lords, while the Vile Dynasty has 120 or so city lords. Adding on the other 4 factions, they have 180 city lords. I think we should ask for help from the other factions. For example, if you have a good relationship with the Demon Path sect, you could try to negotiate with them or the Vile Dynasty to see if you can reconcile. That's impossible. The Vile Dynasty has already pressured the other factions, and the Demon Path sect won't help us. It's better to rely on ourselves than to rely on others. I don't have any intentions of negotiating. Don't worry, I'm confident in this battle, so you don't need to worry," Yitsong said resolutely. The ancestors could only sigh and shake their heads as they left the room. Soon, Zhao Fu received news that the Night Dynasty had brought a large number of soldiers to attack the Night Dynasty. This shocked the entire southern continent. No one had thought that the Vile Dynasty would cross an entire continent to attack the Night Dynasty. Just how great of an enmity was this? The various factions watched as if they were going to watch a good show. After all, this was between the Night Dynasty and the Vile Dynasty, and it had nothing to do with them. However, from the looks of things, the Night Dynasty was at a great disadvantage. Not only did it have to face the Vile Dynasty, but it also had 4 other factions working together. If nothing out of the ordinary happened, the Night Dynasty would definitely be doomed. It was a pity that one of the top factions in the southern continent had been destroyed just like that. As the various factions mocked and felt sorry for the Night Dynasty, Ugra led his army near the Night Dynasty. This time, he and the 4 other factions gathered their forces, wanting to destroy the Night Dynasty in one fell swoop. Thinking about how he had been injured and enraged back then, Ugra felt quite furious. If he did not kill Yitsong, he would not be satisfied. This time, he was going to destroy the Night Dynasty as well and capture all of the Night Dynasty's women to make them his female slaves. Only then would the anger in his heart be appeased. He also wanted that bitch Mo Yao heir. After destroying the Night Dynasty, he would consider attacking the Demon Path sect and have that bitch submit to him. Ugra couldn't help but laugh out loud. 60 million soldiers gave off a boundless aura as they flooded towards the Night Dynasty like a black tide. The terrifying formation caused the surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers to feel an oppressive aura, and ordinary birds and beasts had long since run away in fear. The soldiers below were ferocious like a tide, and the 200 city lords above gave off heaven-shaking auras. They were incredibly arrogant, not bothering to hide their might at all. Because they had been in a rush, the Night Dynasty did not have enough time to prepare. They had only built a 7-meter-tall defensive wall, which even a Stage 2 soldier could jump over. After all, a Stage 1 soldier could jump 4 or 5 meters. Yitsong and the Night Dynasty's city lords also stood in the air, giving off massive auras. However, it was evident that Yitsong's side was weaker, and his expression was quite serious and unsightly. They were facing 200 cities and 14 ancestors. Just the Vile Dynasty alone had 10 ancestors, and the other 4 factions had 1 each. With their strength, they would be able to take on 5 or 6 ancestors without a problem. They also had 60 or so city lords, which meant that they had 260 city lords. Ugger stood in the air and wildly laughed as he said, "Yeet Song, I'll give you one last chance. I'll give you one last chance. Acknowledge me as your master and become my servant. Your Knight dynasty must submit to me and offer up your women and wealth, and I'll spare you. Otherwise, I'll slaughter your entire Knight dynasty." Yeet Song coldly laughed and did not reply to Ugger's words. Instead, he looked at the ancestors of the four factions and said, "I've treated you well after ascending to the throne. Why are you allying with the Vile dynasty to attack the Knight dynasty?" One of the four ancestors said mockingly, "The weak are prey to the strong. If your Knight dynasty can't adapt to this, it should be destroyed. Everything that your Knight dynasty has done to us is shocking, and will pay you back 100 times over." Yeet Song coldly looked at the four ancestors and said in a bone-chilling voice, "Don't blame me for seeking death." This caused the four ancestors to disdainfully laugh. Now, it was not certain who would die. Ugger felt even more furious at Yeet Song's disregard, and he wanted to eat Yeet Song alive. He was the first to attack. He led the other city lords towards the Knight dynasty city lord, and the battle between the two sides officially began. The battle in the sky unfolded, and the Vile dynasty's soldiers also charged. Their massive and terrifying aura seemed to cover the heavens and earth as they rushed towards the defensive walls. Deafening cries sounded out in the surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers, causing people to feel incredibly terrified. Swish, 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 the soldiers on the defensive walls drew their bows and shot terrifying arrows towards the massive black tide. The arrows rained down, killing many enemies, but not stopping the black tide in the slightest. The black-robed figures once again stepped out and once again cast darkness invasion, causing black fog to spread out towards the black tide. However, the Vile dynasty's factions were prepared, and the soldiers at the front roared as massive amounts of demonic chi flowed out of their bodies. Demon images flew out of their bodies and shot into the black fog, devouring it. Boom! The massive army slammed against the defensive walls, and some stage 2 soldiers jumped onto the defensive walls and started to fight with the Knight dynasty soldiers. The Vile dynasty soldiers also started to use all sorts of methods to attack, and the Knight dynasty soldiers desperately attacked. However, the other side had a massive advantage in numbers, and there were also a large number of archers at the back. They ferociously shot at the defensive walls, and the Knight dynasty situation was not looking good. More and more people died, and it was only a matter of time before the Vile dynasty broke through. The situation below was not good, and the situation above was not good either. The Knight dynasty city lord was surrounded by a few other dynasty lords, and the Knight dynasty's 5 ancestors were being suppressed by the other side. They had many injuries, and it seemed that they would not be able to hold on for much longer. Ugger loudly laughed as he ferociously attacked Yeet Song. Now, he was completely confident that he would be able to destroy the Knight dynasty. He could not help but lick his lips with his blood-red tongue as he eerily said to Yeet Song, "Later, I'll cut off your flesh and have a good taste of it." Yeet Song coldly laughed as he said, "Is that so? Do you really think that you've won?" This made Ugger feel quite confused. If they weren't certain that they would win, then how would they win? Ugger thought about it, and just as he was about to attack Yeet Song again, he suddenly felt an unprecedented feeling of fear in his heart explode out. Boom! Boom! Chapter 789. The shockwaves turned into apocalyptic gales that swept through everything. The ground was easily peeled off, and people were blown away like ants. Countless plants were uprooted, and nothing could stop them. Countless specks of yellow sand were blown into the sky by the berserk gales, covering the entire sky. Terrifying explosions sounded out in 10 or so regions. Even those in the distance could sense these terrifying shockwaves. This was a destructive power that could destroy anything, and their hair stood on end. They looked into the distance, which was covered by a layer of dust, as if there was no life at all. Ha ha! The terrifying explosion slowly calmed down and the dust that covered the sky dissipated. Wild laughter sounded out. It was Yeet's song. Massive craters that were 10 or so kilometers wide had appeared in the ground, and there were 200 or so of them. The destructive power still lingered on the ground, causing people's hearts to feel a chill. There was blood and corpses everywhere, giving off a nauseating stench. Only a portion of the black tide remained at the back, and a larger portion remained at the top, while the center was filled with corpses. The massive shockwave caused a defensive wall to be covered with cracks, and it looked like it would collapse at any moment. A few Dynasty legatee soldiers lay on the ground, and countless people from the Night Dynasty lay on the ground, resisting the shockwave with great difficulty. The reason for these 200 or so craters was because Zhao Fu had put in 200 or so destruction crystals. Qin had originally had 75 destruction crystals, but after 2 months, he had created 128 of them. Now, Zhao Fu had used all of them here. The explosion had happened at the center, where most people had died. Out of the 60 million soldiers, at least 50 million had died. The soldiers at the front had been fortunate enough to escape, numbering around 7 million. The people at the back had also been fortunate enough to escape, numbering around 3 million. However, because of the shockwave, they were all injured, and the tide of the battle instantly turned. Yitsong's arrogant laughter sounded throughout the battlefield. Not only were the Dynasty Lords shocked, but even the Night Dynasty City Lords looked incredibly shocked. They had never thought that such a thing would happen. "I'll kill you." Seeing so many people die, Ugr's eyes bulged as he looked at Zhao Fu and roared. A demonic saber giving off a chilling black light, and a heaven-toppling demonic might slowly descended. The surrounding 1,000 regions felt a ferocious demonic intent descend, and their souls could not help but tremble. This was the vile dynasty's nation armament, the demon king ancestral saber. Boom, boom, boom. Massive explosions sounded out as the 200 or so city lord from the other dynasties exploded out with terrifying power. Seeing so many of their soldiers die, their eyes burned with murderous fury as they looked at the Night Dynasty's city lords as if they wanted to devour them alive. Such terrifying power caused even the Night Dynasty's city lords to feel afraid, and the 5 ancestors felt a chill. Ha! Yitsong's laughter did not diminish and continued to laugh domineeringly, as if he did not place them in his eyes at all. In his eyes, they were just pigs. This made the city lords feel even more furious, and a trace of madness appeared on their faces as they prepared to rush at Yitsong. The Night Dynasty's city lords' hearts sank, and they also surrounded Yitsong in order to stop the other city lords' attacks. However, they could not help but think to themselves, Yitsong's laughter is simply too arrogant. He doesn't know what's going on and has angered them. Facing 200 or so berserk city lords and the vile dynasty's legatee using his nation armament, the Night Dynasty's city lords felt a chill in their hearts, and the 5 ancestors' expressions were quite unsightly. It seemed that a massive battle was about to erupt. Boom, boom, boom. Massive explosions sounded throughout the sky as people giving off terrifying auras and terrifying might, looking like godly spirits, slowly appeared in the air. There were 900 or so of them, and the might they gave off seemed to be able to collapse the heavens. Whether it was the Night Dynasty city lords or the other dynasty lords, all of them sank into terror. This was the most terrifying power they had ever felt. Now, it was not just the Night Dynasty's city lords who felt nervous. Even the other dynasty lords who had gone berserk felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads, and they immediately came back to their senses. Ugr's expression was also quite unsightly as he looked around. Boom! A ray of black light descended from the sky as a figure giving off a shocking might slowly appeared in front of everyone. He wore a black cloak, and his body was surrounded by demonic chi. Only his eyes, which were like those of a ferocious beast, gave off a blood-red light as he looked at everyone. The city lords' bodies felt a chill, and they felt as if they had been stared at by an extremely terrifying creature. Their bodies instinctively stiffened, and they did not know if this person was a person or a god. I said that you were seeking death. Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive. Yi Tsang said arrogantly and domineeringly as he gave off a dense killing intent. The surrounding Qin city lords all obeyed and simultaneously attacked. The Night Dynasty's city lords felt as if they had just escaped from the gates of hell, and a chill ran down their backs. They had never thought that these people would be willing to listen to Yi Tsang. The people from the dynasty legatees had never thought that Yi Tsang would have such terrifying power. Right now, they only had one thought in their minds, which was to run. The dynasty legatees' city lords wanted to run, but they were stopped by the city lords of Qin City. Ugur turned into a ray of demonic light and shot into the sky, no longer wanting to fight. Using a nation armament would give him immense power, but there was a limit to this power. Facing 900 or so city lords, he would definitely die. Zhao Fu, who was standing beside Yi Tsang, also acted. The golden pupil in his left eye constricted as a transcendent aura exploded out. Tens of thousands of chains shot out from where Zhao Fu was standing and shot towards Ugur. Countless chains shot towards Ugur, and he was given a big fright. He didn't hesitate to use the Demon King ancestral saber, and a massive saber light slashed out, cutting all of the incoming chains into pieces. Not a single one remained. Ugur was delighted, and just as he was about to continue running, City Lord seals shot out from Zhao Fu's body, turning into rays of light that shot towards Ugur. There were over 1,000 of them, and they gave off different lights as they scattered around Ugur. Ugur had never thought that a single person would be able to use so many City Lord seals. This was the first method of using City Lord seals that the Golden Dragon had mentioned, which was to use them as special equipment. With Zhao Fu's current power, he was unable to use 1,000 City Lord seals, so Zhao Fu had used up 10% of Qin City's fate. Even though it had used up a lot of fate, Zhao Fu felt that it was definitely worth it. He grabbed at the air, and a boundless energy instantly locked down Ugur's body. Ugur was given a big fright and vigorously struggled, his body burning with demonic flames. He wanted to explode out with all of his nation armament's power, but at that moment, 5 chains shot out from the ground, binding Ugur in the air and dragging him into the sealed region underground. Chapter 790. After temporarily sealing Ugur, Zhao Fu's terrifying gaze turned to the remaining dynasty lords. This caused the dynasty lords' hearts to feel a chill, and they felt as if they were standing naked in winter. Their bodies uncontrollably trembled, and they could not help but feel terror. Zhao Fu turned into a ray of light and shot towards the ancestors, and Qin and the other dynasty lords also attacked. Yi Tsang loudly laughed as he rushed over, and the Night Dynasty city lords felt as if they had received heavenly might, and they were filled with battle intent as they rushed towards the other dynasty lords. The Night Dynasty soldiers also started to hunt down the Dynasty Lord soldiers. Because the shockwaves were simply too terrifying, the Dynasty Lord soldiers were all injured and their morale plummeted. They were completely suppressed by the Night Dynasty side, and there were already people running away. Qin had killed 203 city lords in total, and not a single one had escaped. Qin's side had obtained a complete victory, and only a few city lords had been injured and had not suffered any losses. Almost all of the Dynasty Lord's soldiers had been slaughtered. Apart from the Night Dynasty soldiers, after dealing with the Dynasty Lords, the other Dynasty Lords started to slaughter them, and only a few were able to escape. Seeing that the battle was under his control, Zhao Fu entered the sealed region and looked at Ugur, who was bound by countless chains. He coldly laughed and handed his body over to the Golden Dragon. Ugur's eyes widened as he furiously looked at Zhao Fu and cursed. Yi Tsang, that bastard, you colluded with people from the outside world. Do you know who I am? I'm the Dark Demon World's legatee. If you dare to do anything to me, aren't you afraid of causing 2 world wars? Before, when Zhao Fu had used his fate, Ugur, as the legatee, was extremely sensitive to it. Even though Zhao Fu had used demonic qi to hide it, Ugur had still sensed it. After all, Zhao Fu was not someone from the Dark Demon world. Zhao Fu did not reply to Ugur, because the golden dragon had taken over his body. Zhao Fu stretched out his hand and opened his palm towards Ugr's body, and a 30-centimeter wide golden magic formation appeared in front of his palm. Ugr sensed something, and his expression fell. He hatefully glared at Zhao Fu and yelled, "Hurry and stop. Otherwise, you're dead. I'll definitely kill you." However, no matter how much he yelled, Zhao Fu was unmoved. Zhao Fu stretched out his hand and grasped at the air, causing a black city lord seal and a demonic saber to be drawn out of Ugr's body with a golden light. The two of them left Ugr's body and kept trembling. They wanted to return to Ugr's body, but they were restrained by the golden light. Can't leave a trace. This city lord seal was twice as big as an ordinary city lord seal, and it gave off dense demonic chi. It seemed to be made of black jade, and there was an engraving of a demon squatting on it. This was the Demon King City's Level 1 capital city seal. There was also a demonic saber. It was very long and thin, about 3.5 feet long, and it looked like a Meowdow. There was a demon with 2 horns on the handle, and the blade was completely black and gave off a blood-red light. This was the Vile Dynasty's nation armament, the Demon King Ancestral Saber. Because Ugr had just manifested it, Zhao Fu was able to easily draw it out through Ugr's body. Otherwise, it would have taken quite a bit of effort. After restricting the 2 items, Zhao Fu took out a reality fruit. This reality fruit floated above Zhao Fu's palm and slowly melted into a crystalline liquid. Zhao Fu tossed it out, and the liquid flew into Ugr's body, causing his body to become real. Following this, Zhao Fu did not do anything else. He returned to the ground and controlled Yi Tsong's body. He then pressed his hand against the ground, and a black substance spread out from Yi Tsong's palm, forming an octagonal diagram. This was Yi Tsong's king's seal. After this octagonal diagram was formed, it flowed into the ground like a liquid, completing the final seal. Zhao Fu could not kill Ugr yet, as he was a legatee. Once his life was in danger, the world seal would appear, and with the world's power, he would become quite difficult to deal with. Zhao Fu could not kill Ugr right now, as he was a legatee. Using Yi Tsong's power to complete the seal was just to cover up and to avoid suspicion. Looking at the 2 items in his hand, Zhao Fu could not help but feel delighted. Now, he only had one goal, which was to relocate the Demon King City. The Demon King City was a Level 1 capital city, and if he could relocate it, the Qin Kingdom would have 3 capital cities. At that moment, Zhao Fu received more news that the Vile Dynasty was still sending more soldiers here. It seemed that they did not know the exact situation here and thought that the city lords were only in danger, so they had come to reinforce them. Zhao Fu left this matter to the Night Dynasty because the first thing he needed to do was to relocate the Demon King City in the Western continent. No matter the price, Zhao Fu had to obtain the Demon King City. After Zhao Fu left with the countless city lords, a few shocked ancestors came to Yi Tsong's side. They were incredibly courteous and even had a trace of respect as they asked, "Yi Tsong, who are they? Can that terrifying cloaked figure really listen to you?" The ancestors could not help but feel shocked. Zhao Fu had brought 900 or so city lords to descend, and the scene was simply too shocking. 900 or so city lords was an incredibly powerful force, and they could completely destroy the Night Dynasty. In their eyes, the Night Dynasty would not be able to resist at all. If Yi Tsong could control this power, they would not have any objections to him becoming the ruler of the Night Dynasty, and would definitely acknowledge him. Yi Tsong lightly smiled and said mysteriously, "Ancestors, you don't need to worry about this. I'll take care of it." Seeing that Yi Tsong did not want to say anything, the ancestors could not do anything. However, seeing how confident Yi Tsong was, they felt much more at ease. Zhao Fu brought the city lords to the Western continent and arrived near the Vile Dynasty. However, they were still a bit late, and the Night Dynasty was now under lockdown. However, Zhao Fu was not worried. After all, with the Vile Dynasty's City Lord seal, Zhao Fu had full authority. The City Lord seal was the core of a city, and it allowed him to completely control the city. Moreover, the Vile dynasty controlled many regions, so Zhao Fu could control everything. Even though Zhao Fu was not part of the Dark Demon race and could not create new people after taking over the Vile Dynasty City Lord Seal, he could use the City Lord Seal to obtain authority over various cities. Zhao Fu took out the Vile Dynasty's City Lord Seal and sent Black Emperor's power into it, as he said coldly. All of the Vile Dynasty's official positions are abolished, and all of the residents are to be treated as violent mobs. Immediately expel them from the Vile Dynasty. Boom! Boom! Rays of black light shot into the sky. There was a pillar of light in each of the 35 regions that the Vile Dynasty controlled. The countless Night Dynasty residents heard Zhao Fu's heavenly might, and they felt as if cold water had been poured over their heads. The Vile Dynasty had fallen into someone else's hands. Following this, a wave of energy covered their bodies, wanting to expel them from the Vile Dynasty. This shocked them, and the entire Vile Dynasty fell into chaos, not knowing what to do. Chapter 791. After the Elder roared, an aura rushed into the sky, and everyone else seemed to sense something and also roared. We are all subjects of the Vile Dynasty, and will only be loyal to the Vile Dynasty. Waves of aura flowed out from their bodies towards the Demon King City, and the city heart floating above the city hall continuously trembled as it sensed these cries. It gave off countless rays of black light that pierced through the tens of thousands of meters of space, giving off shocking sounds. The Vile Dynasty City Seal in Zhao Fu's hand also gave off a demonic light and continuously trembled, resisting Zhao Fu's orders. Zhao Fu felt quite startled and sent even more Emperor's power into it as he once again yelled, "Abolish all Vile Dynasty's official positions and treat all residents as rioters. Immediately expel them from the Vile Dynasty." The 35 regions' black pillars of light shined even brighter, and an even greater power covered the Vile Dynasty's countless residents, trying to expel them. However, the residents loudly yelled, desperately resisting this power. Sensing these voices, the City Lord Seal in Zhao Fu's hand continued to resist Zhao Fu's orders and exploded out with power, trying to escape from Zhao Fu's grasp. The Vile Dynasty City Seal controlled 35 regions and had the power to expel these residents. However, Zhao Fu was not the true owner of the Vile Dynasty City, and the City Lord's heart sensed the will of the people and resisted Zhao Fu's orders. The Vile Dynasty City had already set up a large formation and many barriers, and Zhao Fu had wanted to expel these people and easily obtain the Vile Dynasty City. However, this had the opposite effect. The will of the people was simply too strong, and the City Lord Seal violently struggled in Zhao Fu's hand, resisting all of Zhao Fu's orders. Zhao Fu was unable to completely control it, and he could only use brute force to suppress the Vile Dynasty City's power. This matter had to be dealt with quickly, as this was the Dark Demon world. Staying even a moment longer would put them in great danger, so they could not waste any time. The Vile Dynasty originally had 240 million people, and after subtracting the 40 million soldiers who had died, there were still 200 million people left. Apart from those who had not returned, or those who had not entered the Heaven Awakened world, there were at most 150 million people in the Vile Dynasty. Of course, these civilians weren't as strong as the soldiers. Some of the players were slightly stronger than the NPCs, but on average, they were all very weak. Luckily, he had some backup plans. Zhao Fu's disaster ring flashed with a black light, and 10 skeleton cavalrymen riding on skeleton horses giving off disaster appeared. "King, what can I do for you?" When the 10 disaster cavalrymen appeared, they all knelt on one knee and lowered their heads, looking incredibly respectful. The disaster cavalrymen's strength had already reached stage 5, and because of the large-scale battles, they had absorbed an ocean of deathly aura. The higher their level, the more intelligent they became. Now, they had the intelligence of a normal person, and Zhao Fu wanted to fuse City Lord Seals into their bodies. That way, they would become incredibly powerful, but he found that he could not, as they were ring spirits of the Disaster King ring. Activate Undead Calamity. The 10 disasters obeyed and simultaneously stood up from the ground. They drew the black swords at their waists, and 10 pillars of light shot into the sky. The massive deathly aura formed a vortex, and a black magic formation that gave off a dense deathly aura appeared. Zhao Fu threw out corpses from his spatial ring. These were the corpses of the dark demon people that the god race had slaughtered, and they were now put to use. There were 50 million or so corpses in total, and Zhao Fu did not gather them together. Instead, he scattered them across 35 locations, causing massive panic and terror. Moreover, he released them near cities. These cities' tall city walls were destroyed by Zhao Fu's orders, and the city hearts were taken away by Zhao Fu. Countless skeletons swarmed into the city walls and started a savage massacre, while the Vile Dynasty's residents vigorously retaliated. They had to be fast, as such a big thing would definitely attract other people's attention. Zhao Fu did not hesitate and threw out 100 or so spirit pet rings, causing lights to flash. Roar! Roar! Dragons' roars tore through the sky as wyverns giving off terrifying auras appeared in the sky. There were 1,300 of them, and the terrifying dragons' might they gave off caused all of the creatures in the region to weakly lie on the ground and tremble. Swish, swish, swish! The wyverns obeyed Zhao Fu's orders and flapped their wings, bringing with them massive shockwaves as they flew towards the countless cities and towns. The Vile Dynasty's residents had been defending against the skeletons, as the skeletons were not very powerful. Adding on the fact that they had an advantage in numbers, it was not a problem for them to defend against the skeletons. However, a few massive auras suddenly descended, bringing with them wild gales. Countless people looked at the 100-meter-long wyverns in terror. The massive dragons might caused everyone to fall into terror, and their bodies froze. Roar! 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 The wyverns gave massive roars as their stomachs bulged, and they spat out flames and icy blasts. The searing flames easily turned everything into ash, and the bone-chilling coldness froze people. The scene became completely chaotic, and everyone was filled with terror. The formations that they had set up collapsed, and ear-piercing screams sounded out as some people could not help but run. The wyverns slaughtered in the sky, continuously burning people into ash and freezing them. The battlefield was filled with flames and icy auras, making it seem like a world of fire and ice. The Vile Dynasty's residents drew their bows and vigorously shot out arrows. However, the countless arrows slammed into the wyvern scales and were all sent flying. They did not even leave a mark on the wyverns, causing all of the Vile Dynasty's residents to despair. With the wyverns' defenses, let alone them, even Stage 1 soldiers would find it difficult to harm them. After all, dragons had incredibly powerful defenses, and Sheen's wyverns had mutated and were comparable to Stage 7 dragons. The wyverns continuously rampaged in the sky, spitting out flames and icy blasts. Below, the countless skeletons ferociously attacked the Vile Dynasty's residents. The Vile Dynasty's residents continuously died, and almost all of them were slaughtered. Regardless of whether they were male or female, old or young, none of them could escape. Pained cries continuously sounded out, and blood covered the entire Vile Dynasty. It was as if the Vile Dynasty had fallen into hell, and it was filled with despair, fear, and death. Above the Vile Dynasty city, Zhao Fu led his city lords like a god, looking down on the Vile Dynasty's people. At such a critical moment, the entire Vile Dynasty's imperial family had hurried over. Now, there were still 20 million or so residents and a small number of soldiers in the Vile Dynasty city. A demonic formation was activated, and a demon king image appeared in the sky, protecting the entire Vile Dynasty city. Apart from the formation, there were also countless restrictions that formed a firm defense. In actuality, Zhao Fu had the Vile Dynasty city's city seal, so he could easily dispel all of this power. However, he could not control the Vile Dynasty city seal, so he could only use brute force. Chapter 792. A well-built middle-aged man stood in the air with a few people and said, "Sir, I don't know who you are or why you have such enmity with the Vile dynasty. However, as long as you're willing to give up on taking down the Vile dynasty city, we'll agree to any request you have." Zhao Fu's side was not in a hurry to attack. The city lords were all wearing black cloaks and used magic stones to hide their auras. They stood in the air and tightly surrounded the Vile dynasty city. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Zhao Fu lightly laughed and said, "I want the Vile dynasty to submit to me and leave everything to me. Right now, I'm your king, and you can only be my followers. Do you understand?" These domineering and unreasonable words caused a trace of fury to appear in the middle-aged man's eyes, but he endured it. His goal was to stall for time so that the others could destroy the city hall's defensive barrier. "Can I think about it?" the middle-aged man said to Zhao Fu, pretending to hesitate. Zhao Fu lightly smiled and nodded. He knew that the Vile dynasty city was stalling for time, and Zhao Fu was also waiting for time. As the Vile dynasty's residents died, the resistance of the city lord seals became weaker and weaker. This formation was incredibly powerful. After all, it was a kingdom protecting magic formation. Moreover, the Demon King image had offensive abilities, but in order to be safe, it was now fully defensive, and it was being maintained by 2,000 residents. At the same time, there were countless restrictions protecting it, so even Zhao Fu and the city lords would not be able to break through it. As such, Zhao Fu decided not to attack. The middle-aged man thought for a moment before saying apologetically, "I'll have to go back and discuss such a big matter." Zhao Fu smiled and nodded, not minding too much as he agreed. Following this, a few peerlessly beautiful people flew into the sky. One of them was a tall and slim woman with snow-white skin, and she looked incredibly seductive as she said to Zhao Fu, "Sir, there are many side branches in the Vile dynasty. There are many branches of the Vile dynasty, and we don't have the same opinion. However, there are many people who are willing to submit to us, but we still need some time to convince them. Why don't we serve you? We are the princesses of the Vile dynasty." Zhao Fu wouldn't believe their nonsense. Although they said they would submit, they were still furiously attacking the city hall's protective shield. How could Zhao Fu believe them? However, the resistance of the Demon King's city lord seal was becoming weaker and weaker. Seeing that he was about to completely control the city lord seal, Zhao Fu had the time to continue chatting with them. "Sure, but how did you get out?" Zhao Fu also let out a lewd laugh. This was definitely not a laugh that came from Zhao Fu's heart. "I forgot about it. Sorry. Can you wait a bit?" "Once they're done discussing, they'll remove the formation and will satisfy you," said the woman in the lead flirtatiously. The other women beside her also flirtatiously tried to seduce Zhao Fu. "Gotcha!" At that moment, under the countless people's attacks, a small crack appeared on the city hall's protective shield. This delighted the Vile dynasty's people, and they continued to madly attack, causing more and more cracks to appear. The women worked even harder to seduce Zhao Fu, allowing Zhao Fu's lewd gaze to sweep over their bodies. However, Zhao Fu suddenly laughed, and his laughter was as clear as spring water. In the next second, Zhao Fu's body shot out like a ray of light towards the Demon King City Hall. This caused the women to feel incredibly shocked, and they thought that Zhao Fu wouldn't be able to enter due to the protection of the formation. However, what shocked them was that the formation and countless restrictions didn't stop Zhao Fu at all, allowing Zhao Fu to pass through. Zhao Fu's figure streaked past and shot into the black protective shield. This caused the Vile dynasty's people to feel incredibly shocked, and they madly attacked the defensive shield. Bang! A shattering sound could be heard as the powerful protective shield shattered into countless pieces. The Vile dynasty's people hurriedly rushed towards the city hall, praying that they wouldn't succeed. Boom! A ray of demonic light shot into the sky, gathering all of the Vile dynasty's fate. A savage-looking demon dragon unwillingly roared as its body turned into countless rays of demonic light and disappeared. Immediately, the Vile dynasty's people's hearts plummeted, and their faces were filled with despair and emptiness. They looked like people without corpses. The Vile dynasty had fallen. A figure rushed through the roof of the city hall, giving off a massive aura as he stood in the air. By now, the Demon King image and countless restrictions had been removed by Zhao Fu, and black-cloaked figures enter the Demon King city. Kill the Vile dynasty's imperial family, and take some of the women away. Hurry up and act. Zhao Fu coldly gave the order, and Qin City lords exploded out with terrifying auras as they flew towards the Vile dynasty's imperial family and started a brutal massacre. Wyverns also flew into the Demon King city and started a bloodbath against the terrified Vile dynasty's residents, continuously spitting out flames and icy blasts. Even though there were many residents, they were like ants and were slaughtered by Qin City. This would be recorded in the Dark Demon World's history as the Vile Dynasty Massacre. After killing and looting, Zhao Fu did not dare to stay for even a moment longer, and he quickly returned to the human world with his people. Not too long after Zhao Fu left, the Dark Demon World's legatees all arrived. Looking at the countless ruins and corpses, their expressions were incredibly unsightly. This matter shook the entire Dark Demon World, and those who did not know much about the battle between the Vile Dynasty and the Night Dynasty now knew. The powerful Vile Dynasty had been destroyed by someone. As one of the Dark Demon World's largest factions, its sudden destruction caused countless factions to feel terror. Just who could destroy it? Had the World Protector acted against the Vile Dynasty? Before, they had thought that it was Mo-Chi who had done it, but they later found out that it was the Night Dynasty. At that moment, Yi Tsang's name resounded throughout the entire Dark Demon World. Everyone now knew what had happened. The Vile Dynasty had allied with 4 factions, but they had still suffered a crushing defeat. No one had expected this at all. What shocked them even more was that 900 or so city lords had descended like gods, as well as the countless dragons that spat out flames and ice. This power seemed to be able to sweep through the entire world, and even the Dark Demon World's #1 sect, the Demon Heaven sect, did not have such power. This was simply too terrifying, and some people even suspected that it was fake. The Night Dynasty, which had been one of the top 10 or so factions, had instantly taken the top spot. Countless people were shocked and sent gifts to express their goodwill. Soon, the Night Dynasty gathered representatives of most of the Dark Demon World's factions. The higher-ups of the 4 factions who had fought against the Night Dynasty all had incredibly pale faces, and their eyes were filled with terror. They had lost half of their forces this time. In actuality, they had only been able to escape because time was of the essence. After destroying the Vile Dynasty, Zhao Fu would not have the time to destroy these 4 factions, as they would most likely be intercepted by the legatees. Even though Zhao Fu did not fear them, he feared the world's power. Chapter 793. Because they were at the peak of the situation, Zhao Fu could not directly act, so he decided to wait for things to settle down. The one who felt the most regret was the Demon Path sect. The ancestors and sect masters' expressions were quite unsightly. They had never thought that Yi Tsang would control such a terrifying faction and be able to sweep across the world. The Demon Path sect was completely powerless in front of Yi Tsang. Thinking about their actions from before, they had undoubtedly angered the Night Dynasty. Now, they had a reason to destroy the Demon Path sect, causing the entire Demon Path sect to panic. The ancestors and sect masters could not help but think of Mo Yao Air. For the sake of the Demon Path sect's safety, they could only lower their pride and admit their mistakes. They hoped that Mo Yao Air could go and repair their relationship. Before, Mo Yao Air did not want to go because back then, she could not convince them to support the Night Dynasty no matter how hard she tried. They had made up their minds and said that they had been enchanted by Yi Tsang and could not see the situation clearly. Back then, she had been incredibly angry because her heart was already filled with the person she thought about day and night. She did not feel anything towards Yi Tsang at all. However, in the end, Mo Yaoer still agreed to go to the Night Dynasty because the ancestors had cried so miserably. Her father, who had always doted on her, squeezed out a few tears and begged her, so Mo Yao Air could only agree. However, Mo Yao Air was quite confused as to why Yi Tsong had such a powerful faction. After thinking about it, Mo Yao Air could not help but think of a certain person. Right now, the Night Dynasty's Yi Tsong was in charge of collecting the spoils of war. There were countless pieces of equipment, money, and many resources. They had not lost many people, only about 4 million people. In the real world, Yi Tsong ordered his people to be on guard in order to prevent them from attacking in the real world. As for the Vile Dynasty, Yi Tsong was not too worried. Even though it was possible to teleport to other continents in the real world, the items required were all incredibly precious. Teleporting a few people was already quite difficult, and they could not send a large number of soldiers to attack the Night Dynasty. Without this restriction, the Vile Dynasty might attack the Night Dynasty in the real world first. That would be quite bad, as the Dark Demon world was in the real world, and Zhao Fu would not be able to help. Unless he brought countless Night Dynasty residents into the Heaven Awakened world, he would not have to worry about their threat. The only downside was that they would die a true death. Moreover, almost all of the Vile Dynasty's patriarchs in the real world had died, and a few of the higher-ups had died as well. The various factions had fallen into internal strife and were no longer in much danger. Of course, Yi Tsong accepted all of the offers. The Night Dynasty's status in the Dark Demon world reached the apex, and it was incredibly lively and joyous. However, a few legatees somewhere had gloomy expressions. They found that the faction that Yi Tsong was using definitely did not come from the Dark Demon world. Even though those people had tried to cover it up, they could not hide it from the legatee. After all, the Dark Demon world did not have such a massive faction. Ugger had disappeared, but he was definitely not dead. As one of the legatees, they could sense that. According to the intelligence of those who had returned to the real world, Ugger had been dragged underground by an extremely terrifying being using iron chains. That terrifying existence was incredibly powerful and seemed ethereal, like a godly spirit. No one could clearly see its appearance, but its shocking eyes were incredibly distinct, making everyone feel as if they had fallen into hell. Ugger had even unleashed his nation armament, but he had been easily subdued by that existence. Everyone felt as if they had fallen into hell, and even Ugger had unleashed his nation armament. This sort of power was not something that ordinary people could have. Ugger was ranked third out of the legatees, and now that he had been defeated so easily, the remaining legatees could not help but feel terror and unease. Now, Mo Chi was fighting with the Spirit Light Race's World Protector and was in closed-door training in the Demon Heaven sect, so they could not count on him to help. That unknown existence made it difficult for them to eat and sleep. If they did not figure it out, the legatees were afraid that it would suddenly appear in front of them, and no one would be able to escape. At that moment, an elegant-looking young man, who was the legatee of the southern continent of the Dark Demon world, received a message and suddenly said, "I know where Ugger is. He has most likely been forcefully sealed, and he should be at the place where the two sides are fighting." Hearing this, the legatees felt quite delighted. If they could find Ugger, they would be able to obtain more information about that terrifying faction. Following this, the legatees went to the place where the battle had taken place and found where the seal was. Seeing this seal, the bald elder said, "This old man will give it a try." After saying this, the elder took out a staff covered with runes and gave off a strange light. He came to the ground and found the center of the seal. He vigorously stabbed the staff into the ground, and the runes on the staff seemed to come to life. Immediately, a black mark appeared on the ground, and just as the bald elder was about to do the next step, a peerlessly beautiful woman beside him sensed something and hurriedly said, "Hurry and leave this place." Clang, clang, clang. The sounds of countless chains rang out, causing the legatees to feel a terrifying sense of danger. They instinctively felt their hairs stand on end, and they did not hesitate to turn into rays of light and shoot into the sky. At that moment, tens of thousands of chains shot out from the ground, giving off shocking sounds. However, the legatees reacted quite quickly, and they somewhat wretchedly dodged the chains. Huh, a light laugh sounded out, causing the legatees to feel quite startled, and they hurriedly looked at Yitsong. You traitor of the dark demon race. You've colluded with people from another world to harm your own race. The bald old man, who narrowly dodged the attack, said angrily. Yitsong's smile faded as he said, Then should we just destroy the Night Dynasty? Don't talk about our own race. I know that Ugra wants to destroy the Night Dynasty, so of course I can use other factions to destroy the Night Dynasty. Also, I advise you not to interfere with that organization's matters. You've all sensed how pitiful and weak you are in front of them. I can also tell you that that organization has spread across 50 or so worlds. They're not something you can offend. The people who just entered the Dark Demon world are just a small team from that organization, and that small team is just one of the 10,000 or so ordinary teams from that organization. Now, do you understand how terrifying they are? They're not something that a new world like ours can contend against. I advise you to be careful, or else you won't even know how you died. Zhao Fu's words were not just to put on airs, but to make the Night Dynasty even more mysterious and to prevent others from spying on them. He wanted to create an illusory organization so that they would not know that Zhao Fu came from the human world that they looked down on. As expected, Zhao Fu's words caused the legatees' expressions to become incredibly serious, and they felt incredibly shocked. Chapter 794. The reason why they believed Yitsong's words was because from what he had said, they could tell that he already knew about the outside world, and he definitely knew more than them. In fact, it was possible that he had connections with the outside factions. If what Yitsong said was true, then with how terrifying that organization was, how could an ordinary team be so powerful? If a few more teams came, would the Dark Demon world be at peace? Although he still had some doubts, he would rather believe it at this moment. If that organization was real, then the few of them would be foolish enough to oppose them. In the end, the organization could send out a few small teams, and they would be able to destroy them like they had destroyed the Vile Dynasty. The countless chains that had stretched out from the seal had almost sealed them as well. Everyone could sense how terrifying it was, so they naturally did not want to undo the seal. However, facing Yitsong, who had borrowed power from the outside world, their expressions were quite unsightly. They felt wariness, disgust, and anger. Suddenly, a peerlessly beautiful woman said, You also relied on the organization's power to obtain the Night Dynasty overnight, right? Hearing this, everyone understood why Yitsong had plotted to take over the Night Dynasty overnight. If he had the support of that organization, this would not have been a problem at all. Yitsong lightly smiled and did not reply. The peerlessly beautiful woman coldly harumphed. I hope you understand your identity and race. If you dare to do anything to harm the Dark Demon world, we'll kill you even if we have to die. After saying this, the woman turned into a ray of light and shot off into the horizon, and the others also left. They could only end things here, mainly because they feared the power behind Yitsong. Moreover, it was the Vile Dynasty who had attacked the Night Dynasty first, so they could not do anything about it. They could only warn Yitsong to remember his identity and not to be a traitor or a dog that helped others harm the Dark Demon world. Yitsong lightly laughed and did not mind their words. He was someone from a human world, so how could this be considered a traitor? Following this, Yitsong returned to the banquet. Back at the Qin Empire, the Qin Empire's gains were quite shocking. It had obtained 203 cities in one go, and it had even obtained a capital city, completing the requirements for leveling up to a royal city. Adding on the EXP from before, it was already halfway to leveling up. Now, as long as the capital was upgraded by 2 levels, the Qin Empire could be restored. It would no longer be an empty name, but a real empire. He now had 3 things to do: rebuild the Demon King city, refine the nation armament, and repair the desolate blood mask. Zhao Fu thought about the first matter and decided to deal with it later. He would deal with the second matter first, which was the Dark Demon world's residents and the Vile Dynasty's women. Zhao Fu had already gathered these 2 things. Now that the Night Dynasty had 60 million indigenous residents, it would not be a problem to have 100,000 less residents. Secondly, when Zhao Fu destroyed the Ugar dynasty, he had captured more than 20 women. Among them were Ugar's mother, a few concubines, and a few princesses. He had also captured a few concubines from other branches of the family, as well as a few of Ugar's women. The women who tried to seduce Zhao Fu were also captured by Zhao Fu. However, they no longer had flirtatious looks on their faces and instead had looks of hatred. Zhao Fu first made these women concubines. In actuality, capturing these women was the easiest way to obtain Phoenix Chi. Not only did he capture a lot of them, but they all had a lot of Phoenix Chi. After making them concubines, countless traces of golden Phoenix Chi flowed out of their bodies and were absorbed by the Emperor Phoenix statue. Now, the Emperor Phoenix statue was 400 meters tall and gave off a powerful aura. It now had a portion of the power of a nation armament. Zhao Fu brought them to the refining building, which was a place to refine nation armaments. It was a 3-story wooden building that was even bigger than before. The decorations were much more extravagant, and the floor was covered with warm jade that gave off heat. After bringing them in, indescribable sounds could be heard. Zhao Fu put on his clothes and brought the Demon King ancestral blade, which was no longer struggling, to the heaven and earth refining formation. This was the second nation armament that Qin had refined, so Zhao Fu felt quite happy. Zhao Fu placed the Demon King ancestral blade into the magic formation and looked at Bai Qi and the others. The others nodded and sent the massive flood of fate into the magic formation. The magic formation absorbed the fate and gave off a faint light. Boom! A massive explosion sounded out as a 10-colored pillar of light rushed into the clouds. Countless traces of heaven and earth fate flooded in, causing a wild gale to blow and the sky to darken. Countless traces of fate continuously condensed and compressed, and an extremely terrifying aura spread out from the sky. The entire northern side of the Midland continent once again felt this terrifying power. However, after thinking about it, they realized who had caused this, and they were not too surprised. After all, the northern side was quite used to this. In the end, the countless traces of fate continuously condensed and compressed, forming a 100-meter-wide 4-legged cauldron that gave off a 10-colored light. This cauldron gave off the might of the heavens and earth, and it was incredibly terrifying and could cause people to tremble. Following this, everyone continued to send fate into the magic formation. The 10-colored cauldron trembled, and a formless karmic flame that gave off a world-burning temperature rose up, and it started to roast the Demon King ancestral blade. As the Demon King ancestral blade was roasted, it started to go through changes. All of the Vile dynasty's aura was stripped away, and it started to give off a faint demonic light, giving off a shocking aura. At that moment, the 100,000 dark demon residents knelt on the ground, and Qin's fate rose up from the ground and flowed into the 10-colored cauldron. The formless karmic flame absorbed Qin's fate and turned into black flames, and the Demon King ancestral blade also absorbed Qin's fate. Time gradually passed, and the 10-colored cauldron, which gave off immense might, turned into countless traces of fate and dissipated. A saber giving off boundless, soul-devouring demonic light appeared in the sky, and its terrifying power caused countless people to feel fear. At that moment, the demonic saber slowly descended from the sky and floated in the air above the magic formation. Its appearance had not changed much, and it was still as long and thin as before. It gave off dense, demonic qi, but there were now many Qin characters on the saber, which were Xiaozhuan characters. Apart from the demonic intent, destruction, and darkness, the demonic saber's aura also gave off a trace of mysteriousness and dignity. It now had a trace of mysteriousness and dignity, and it was now Great Qin's nation armament. Zhao Fu named it the Qin demonic saber. This saber's source was demonic qi, and it could not be changed. Even though it had become Qin's nation armament, its demonic qi did not decrease, and it fused with Qin's killing aura, making it even more powerful than before. Chapter 795. This trace of source energy was a rainbow-colored mote of light that was as big as a mung bean. Even though it was quite small, the power it gave off was incredibly terrifying, and it was even more powerful than 1,000 destruction crystals combined. This was how terrifying source energy was. However, this trace of source energy was not for Zhao Fu, but for the world-cleansing butterfly. It was an insect egg that Zhao Fu had obtained after becoming the world protector. Ever since he had obtained the insect egg, it had not shown any signs of hatching, and Zhao Fu had used all sorts of spirit medicines to catalyze it. However, the effects were incredibly weak, to the point that they were almost non-existent. After all, the world-cleansing butterfly was a world beast, and there were not many things that could be used in a world. Ordinary spirit medicines were naturally useless against it. Zhao Fu placed the demon saber in the city hall and allowed it to be nourished by Qin's fate. Only then did he take out the insect egg and slowly fuse a trace of source energy into it. Immediately, Zhao Fu felt a powerful aura of life coming out from the insect egg, and the weather changed as countless traces of heaven and earth spirit Qi madly gathered and was absorbed by the insect egg. The insect egg on the table gave off a faint rainbow-colored light and floated in the air. As it absorbed more and more heaven and earth spirit Qi, the aura it gave off became more and more terrifying. The entire world seemed to fall silent, and all of China's creatures, whether they were tigers, lions, or wolves, obediently lay on the ground. They instinctively felt a wave of terror, and even the wind stopped blowing and the light seemed to freeze. At that moment, the human world's legatees sensed this power, and they all looked towards Qin's direction. At this moment, a small figure wriggled inside the egg floating in midair. Then, a small black head popped out and looked around curiously. Then, as if discovering that there was no danger, its entire body popped out. The rainbow-colored eggshell automatically turned into dust, and a black, chubby little bug that was as long as a finger hovered in the air. The little worm also felt Zhao Fu's aura and happily flew in front of Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu immediately felt a consciousness trying to communicate with him. However, because the little bug had just been born, it didn't know anything and couldn't express itself clearly. Zhao Fu couldn't understand it, but he could feel its happiness and joy, as well as its closeness to him. Zhao Fu smiled and took out a stage 5 spirit pill that he had bought in the outside world and placed it in front of the little fellow. The little fellow swallowed it in one gulp before looking at Zhao Fu with its round black eyes, looking quite happy and wanting more. Following this, Zhao Fu took out 10 or so stage 5 spirit pills, and the black bug swallowed them all. Only then did it feel full and lazily burrow into Zhao Fu's clothes. Now that the matter of the world-cleansing butterfly had been resolved, it was time to see how Zhao Fu would raise it. The world-cleansing butterfly's potential was definitely greater than the Sky Desolation Azure Dragons, and it would also be stronger than the Sky Desolation Azure Dragon in the future. However, raising it would be more difficult. If an ordinary level 1 beast swallowed a level 5 spirit pill, it would immediately explode and die. However, the little bug had to eat more than a dozen of them before it was full. In the future, it would need to be fed with all sorts of treasures in order to grow. Zhao Fu thought about it and gave the bug a name. He used its original name and named it Cleansing Butterfly. After giving it a name, Zhao Fu reached out and pulled it out from under his clothes, calling it a few times in a low voice. The little bug did not understand the meaning of this name, but towards Zhao Fu's intimacy, it very quickly began to respond. After teasing it a little more, Zhao Fu put it back into his clothes. Because it was just born, the butterfly was still relatively sleepy. The 20 or so women in the refinement tower recovered some of their strength, but their faces were still red. At this moment, a beautiful woman said, "Empress, it's time for you to leave. Should we agree to what he said?" Hearing her words, a young woman immediately said with tears in her eyes, "We definitely won't submit to him, and he's a human. In the future, he'll be our dark demon race's enemy. Our vile dynasty was destroyed by him, so we'd rather die than submit to him." AI. A knowledgeable woman sighed and said, "How could it be so easy to die? Now that we have restrictions placed on our bodies, it is impossible to die even if we want to. Moreover, our bodies have just been taken by him. We don't even have the slightest ability to resist. In actuality, I feel that submitting to him isn't a bad idea either. Now that things have come to this, we can't change anything. Also, he's so powerful. This is the first time I've felt so happy," a lewd woman said. Hearing this, many of the women's faces became red and they glared at her. She knew that she could not retort, so she lightly harumphed and continued to rest on the warm jade. The one who had been called the Empress was a cold-looking woman. She was Ugr's mother, and after thinking for a while, she said, "Now that the vile dynasty has been destroyed, this is something that cannot be changed. We need to think about our future. If we anger him, he won't kill us, but he'll do everything he can to torture us. Do you want to suffer that kind of pain that is worse than death? Moreover, having the vile dynasty city in our hands is better than having it in someone else's hands. That way, we'll have a foothold in Qin." The women fell silent. Thinking about the pain that was worse than death, none of them wanted to endure it. They calmed down and thought about what they should do in the future. In the end, they could only helplessly compromise and look at the princesses. They all had pure, vile dynasty bloodlines, so they were the most suitable city lord. "Ling Heir, your talent is the highest and your bloodline is the purest, so he'll most likely make you the city lord. What do you think?" the Empress said to one of the women. This woman was the woman who had tried to seduce Zhao Fu to stall for time. Her expression was cold as she thought to herself. The other women did not say anything and silently waited for her reply. They would have to rely on her in the future, and without her help, their fates would be quite pitiful. In the end, the woman called Erling nodded and agreed, causing the other women to let out a sigh of relief. Zhao Fu also received news that they had agreed to his request. In actuality, Zhao Fu could choose any dark demon person to be the city lord of an ordinary city. However, the vile dynasty city was one of the 3 capital cities of Qin, so Zhao Fu had to make sure that the vile dynasty city could unleash its true power. Its true power could only be unleashed by those with the vile dynasty bloodline. Relatively speaking, it would be easier to subdue women because of their relationship with Zhao Fu. However, if a man found out that his sisters and family had been humiliated by Zhao Fu, he would hate Zhao Fu to death, and it would be impossible for him to be loyal. Chapter 796. Zhao Fu returned to the refining tower and looked at the woman called Hateful Spirit, feeling quite surprised. Hateful Spirit's expression was cold as she turned her head to the side. Zhao Fu did not mind her attitude, and he took her away from Xianyang City to the nearby Qin province, where he rebuilt the Demon King City. Following this, he made Hateful Spirit the city lord and planted a 6 desires demonic seed in her body. Since he had made her the city lord, Zhao Fu naturally wanted to completely control her. After dealing with another matter, Zhao Fu ordered his people to start preparing for the third matter, which was to restore the desolate blood mask. Before, everyone had thought that the desolate blood shard was a nation armament shard, and the information on it had said that it was a nation armament shard. However, after Taoba Qing's bloodline had awakened, the Golden Dragon had said that it was not a nation armament, but something that surpassed Emperor Heaven armaments. Zhao Fu did not know what was going on, but perhaps after restoring it, he would be able to obtain some information about it. As such, he quickly called Taoba Qing over. Taoba Qing had blood-red hair and eyes, making her look incredibly devilishly beautiful. However, her personality was still quite pure and cheerful, and after hearing that the desolate blood mask was going to be restored, she felt quite happy. After all, this desolate blood mask felt quite familiar to her. Repairing the desolate blood mask was not the same as refining a nation armament, but it required the heaven and earth refining formation to repair it. First was blood. It required the blood of at least 100,000 people, and it had to be blood related to Taoba Qing's bloodline. After such a long time, many of the villages and cities had spawned enough people. Because Zhao Fu had made Taoba Qing the city lord, The people spawned from her would be village chiefs. This way, the number of people spawned was quite fast, and there were now 180,000 people. Zhao Fu ordered his people to gather the 180,000 people together and give them a bit of blood. Zhao Fu collected the blood, and even though he needed at least 100,000 people's blood, the more the better. After collecting the blood, Zhao Fu took out the 4 desolate blood shards and brought Tuo Baqing to the heaven and earth refining formation. This time, he was not going to use the great world refining, but the blood refining. Zhao Fu first placed the 4 desolate blood mass shards at the center of the magic formation and then filled the area with buckets of blood. Zhao Fu told Tuo Baqing how to refine the desolate blood mask and had her repair it according to her own method. Tuo Baqing had to do this by herself, and Zhao Fu could not help her. After hearing Zhao Fu's words, Tuo Baqing earnestly nodded and came to the side of the magic formation. She activated the heaven and earth refining formation, and the energy stones within the jade troughs turned into dust. The massive magic formation started to activate, and the 4 desolate blood shards at the center were lifted up by a formless energy. At that moment, Tuo Baqing's expression became serious as she performed hand seals, her body continuously giving off a blood-red aura. Following this, she stretched out a snow-white hand and lightly cried out towards the 4 shards floating in the air. The boundless blood in the buckets seemed to be controlled by a formless energy and flowed towards the 4 shards, forming a 10-meter wide orb of blood. Tuo Baqing took out a sharp blade and slashed her wrist, causing blood to flow out of the wound and be controlled by a formless energy into the orb of blood. Immediately, the orb of blood gave off an intense blood-red light, and a terrifying power spread out like a flood. The sky seemed to darken. It was a pure darkness without a trace of light. It was so deep that it could cause anyone to feel fear. Suddenly, the orb of blood gave off a terrifying aura as it turned into a ray of light and shot into the sky, giving off boundless blood-red light, like a blood-red sun. "Husband, I can't control it anymore." Tuo Baqing's expression fell as she found that she could no longer control the orb of blood, and she hurriedly cried out to Zhao Fu. However, just as Zhao Fu was about to do something, a blood-red light covered Tuo Baqing, and Tuo Baqing's body was dragged into the blood-red sun in the sky. In an instant, the sun in the sky expanded to 1,000 meters, and boundless blinding blood-red light spread out. Zhao Fu's expression fell. This situation had completely gone out of his control. Zhao Fu looked at the blood-red sun in the sky and wanted to stop it when the golden dragon suddenly said, "Don't do anything." Hearing this, Zhao Fu could only stop and ask anxiously, "Just what's going on?" The golden dragon replied, "I said before that her identity is not simple, and I don't know why something like this has happened. However, I can sense that the world's source energy is gathering. This isn't the power of the human world, but the true heaven-awakened world's source energy. With your current strength, you won't be able to stop it at all, and you'll die as soon as you touch it." The entire human world darkened. It was a darkness so dark that one could not even see their own fingers in front of them. The blood-red sun in the sky also expanded to 10,000 meters, truly illuminating the world. Countless people stared at the blood-red sun in shock as an indescribable might descended on the world. Countless creatures felt their bodies sink, and it was as if their hearts were being gripped by a pair of massive hands, making it difficult for them to breathe. Within the blood-red sun, Tuo Baqing fell unconscious, and the 4 shards gave off intense light as they slowly came together and fused into a complete mask. This mask seemed to be made of wood and only had a pair of eyes. There were 2 intersecting blood-red marks on the mask. It gave off an ancient aura. The mask automatically repaired itself and floated towards the unconscious Tuo Baqing before covering her face. Immediately, a pair of cold and terrifying blood-red eyes opened, and a shocking explosion sounded out as the blood-red sun seemed to explode, blinding everyone. An extremely terrifying aura instantly spread out, sweeping through everything in the world. At that moment, the experts in the surrounding dozens of worlds sensed something, and their expressions became serious as they looked in the direction of the human world. In the boundless void at the center of the heaven-awakened world, there were 8 crystals floating in the air. These crystals were incredibly big, and they couldn't even be described as mountains at all. From a distance, one couldn't even see them clearly. Suddenly, one of the blood-red crystals slightly trembled, and immediately, the weather at the center of the heaven-awakened world changed. The sun and moon dimmed, mountains and rivers flowed in reverse, time and space froze, and yin and yang reversed. Countless old monsters who had been in slumber for tens of thousands of years suddenly opened their eyes at that moment. The terrifying power caused the heavens and earth to collapse and all living things to return to dust. All living beings felt terror under their might, and even true emperors could not help but tremble. At that moment, the massive blood-red crystal suddenly calmed down, and all abnormal signs disappeared as if they had never appeared. Zhao Fu could not help but gulp as he looked at that familiar, yet unfamiliar girl in the sky, who seemed to reign above the heavens. The Origin race's power was not something that ordinary people could imagine. At that moment, Tuo Baqing's terrifying blood-red eyes slowly turned to Zhao Fu, causing Zhao Fu's hairs to stand on end. He felt as if his soul was being corroded by ice, and he could not help but tremble as an unprecedented fear flowed out from his heart. Chapter 797. Just as the golden dragon's voice sounded out, Zhao Fu quickly reacted. Just as he was about to move, Tuo Baqing stretched out a white finger toward Zhao Fu. Immediately, the heavens and earth seemed to dim as the world's source energy madly gathered, forming a finger of the heavenly Tao that crushed down on the entire world. Space instantly collapsed, and time and space became chaotic. Zhao Fu's body froze, and his heart started to beat rapidly in fear. Cold sweat appeared on his face, and he felt as if he could not use any of his power. Under that finger, Zhao Fu felt like an ant, and it was the first time he had felt the aura of death at such a close distance. Am I going to die? This was the only thought in Zhao Fu's mind. Any power would be useless against that finger, and Zhao Fu started to feel a trace of despair. Boom! The power of that finger was like a massive meteor crashing into the ground, resulting in a shocking explosion. The shock wave from the explosion instantly blasted out, and the ground in the surrounding 100 kilometers collapsed. All of the flowers, grass, trees, birds, and beasts were turned into nothingness. The terrifying power caused the heavens and earth to fall deathly silent. Tuo Baqing gave off an aura that reigned supreme over the entire world as she stood in the air like a godly spirit, her blood-red eyes coldly staring at the massive crater. Suddenly, a massive, devilish blood-red star, giving off boundless blood-red light, and a shocking pressure gradually broke through the restrictions of the sky and descended into the world. The blood-red color started to spread, and in just an instant, the entire human world was dyed blood-red. The boundless aura that contained coldness, bloodlust, disaster, and savagery poured down like water from a heavenly river. Countless people looked incredibly shocked as they sensed how terrifying this aura was. They felt as if their souls were submerged in icy water, and they could not help but tremble. No matter if it was birds, beasts, or insects, they could only lie on the ground in despair and terror, not even daring to cry out. The entire world fell deathly silent. This terrifying aura flooded into the fish scale world through the massive rift. Immediately, all of the fish scale people felt a chill run through their bodies, causing them to feel a stabbing pain. They could not help but surface, and through the rift, they were shocked to find that the human world had become a blood-red world. That terrifying aura had come from a human world. What had happened to the human world? Everyone in the human world looked at the descending blood-red planet in shock, and a few legatees hurried over. They could sense that something big had happened to Sheen. Cough, cough. Within the deathly silent crater, a few coughs sounded out as Zhao Fu slowly climbed up from the ground, a trace of blood at his lips. His body was covered by boundless blood-red starlight, and it was as if he was in a sea of starlight. This was the power of the Chaos Imperial Star. Tuo Baqing coldly looked at all of this, and Zhao Fu raised his head and looked at her. He found that the young woman in front of him had become a completely different person. She was no longer as bright and cheerful as before, and she was instead filled with coldness and supreme power. Ah! Zhao Fu hysterically roared as he used all of his power. No matter if it was his emperor's power, his city lord seal's power, or the other city lord seal's power, he exploded out with everything he had. A world-shaking power exploded out from Zhao Fu's body, causing berserk gales to sweep out in the surrounding 10,000 kilometers. Blood flowed out of Zhao Fu's left eye, and the golden chains in his 4 pupils continuously spun and gradually became blood-red. Heaven and earth absolute seal. Zhao Fu roared as he slammed his palms against the ground, causing the ground to collapse. Countless chains containing immense force shot out from the ground towards Tuo Baqing. It was impossible to tell how many there were, but it was impossible to tell if there were millions or tens of millions of them. Tuo Baqing's expression finally changed, and she stretched out a hand before vigorously grabbing at the air and twisting it. The space in front of her seemed to twist, forming a vortex, and countless chains shot out of the vortex, breaking one by one. Zhao Fu's terrifying eyes coldly looked at Tuo Baqing, and he once again pressed his hands against the ground, causing a few rays of blood-red light to shoot into the ground. Clang, clang, clang. Suddenly, tens of thousands of chains shot out from the air behind Tuo Baqing, giving off terrifying power as they shot towards Tuo Baqing. Tuo Baqing slightly tilted her head, and her blood-red pupils constricted as a massive wave of power flowed out, once again shattering the countless chains. Ark! Zhao Fu once again roared, looking quite savage as an even more powerful wave of power flowed out. Countless blood-red arcs of lightning flashed around him, and the ground once again cracked. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of countless chains rang out as countless chains stretched out from the air around Tuo Baqing, giving off immense power as they shot towards Tuo Baqing. Tuo Baqing once again stretched out a hand and clasped her hands together. A blood-red crystal appeared on her palm, and a blood-red energy barrier with countless cloud-like inscriptions floated out. Clang, clang, clang. Under Zhao Fu's control, the chains changed their direction and targeted the blood-red energy barrier. The chains wrapped around the blood-red energy barrier, tightly binding it. More and more chains appeared, and they became larger and larger, gradually forming a 100-meter wide ball of chains in the sky. This scene was incredibly shocking, and it was something that ordinary people would never be able to see. The countless chains not only bound the blood-red energy barrier, but they also temporarily sealed Tuo Baqing's terrifying aura. Swish, 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 another 1,000 chains shot out from the ground, reaching into the ball of chains in the sky before slowly pulling it towards the ground. Only by dragging it into the sealed space underground would the sealing be successful. The ball of chains had a powerful resistance, and it was incredibly strenuous for Zhao Fu to slowly pull it towards the ground. Suddenly, Zhao Fu felt that the ball of chains had lost its ability to resist, but he was not in a hurry to rejoice. A blood-red sword light slashed out from the ball of chains, destroying countless chains as the sword light continued to tear through the sky. In the next second, Tuo Baqing's figure appeared in front of Zhao Fu, and she clenched her right hand into a fist as she punched Zhao Fu's chest. Zhao Fu's body quickly flew back and smashed through countless boulders before stopping. Who knew how many bones in his chest had been broken, and his body was a bloody mess. After receiving this attack, Zhao Fu coughed up a mouthful of blood, and he did not even have the strength to crawl up. By now, Tuo Baqing had already appeared in front of Zhao Fu and grabbed Zhao Fu's throat, lifting him up. She coldly looked at Zhao Fu as she started to apply force. Zhao Fu felt more and more pain in his neck, and it felt as if a massive force was squeezing it. It felt as if it was going to break, and he could barely breathe. Am I going to die at the hands of my own woman? Chapter 798. Husband, you're so weak. Tuoba Ching suddenly said as she grabbed Zhao Fu's throat and coldly looked at Zhao Fu with her blood-red eyes. Zhao Fu's heart trembled, and he looked at Tuoba Ching in confusion. His mind was in chaos, and he did not understand what was going on. Tuoba Ching seemed to have her memories from before, but it was as if she was a completely different person and wanted to kill him. Zhao Fu did not know what to say, and he looked at the cold Tuoba Ching with a complicated gaze. He liked the cheerful and beautiful Tuoba Ching from before even more, but the Tuoba Ching from before had disappeared, and he was powerless to change anything. If only I had more power, I would be able to change everything and return everything to how it was before. However, I'm simply too weak, and I'm like a lowly ant. Suddenly, Zhao Fu felt as if his soul had fallen into a boundless demon abyss, and countless amounts of blood-red water covered him. His consciousness gradually became hazy before disappearing and turning into chaos. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded out as the Chaos Imperial Star in the sky gave off an even more intense blood-red light, seeming to tear through the sky. The star started to spin in the sky, and a terrifying power exploded out from Zhao Fu's body as a black and blood-red aura flame burst forth from his body. Tuoba Ching, who had been holding on to Zhao Fu's throat, felt her expression fall as her body was forced back a few meters by this power. Zhao Fu's body floated in the air as the black and blood-red aura flame continuously flickered around him, and his massive aura swept out like a wild gale. The whites of his eyes seemed to be dyed black, and his pupils did not change. However, with the black whites of his eyes, he looked even more evil than before. Two fangs grew out of his mouth, and his ears became sharper. Two short horns grew out of his head, and his hands became sharp claws. Now, Zhao Fu's aura seemed to have become a completely different person. It was filled with coldness, bloodlust, disaster, savagery, and evil, just like the Chaos Imperial Star. Tuoba Ching looked at Zhao Fu, and her expression became serious. She grabbed at the air, and a blood-red sword condensed. Zhao Fu tilted his head back and looked at Tuoba Ching with his terrifying eyes. He gave a trace of a savage and evil smile, causing Tuoba Ching's heart to feel a chill. Shwa! Zhao Fu's body instantly disappeared and reappeared in front of Tuoba Ching. He grabbed at the air, and a black and blood-red sword condensed. Zhao Fu gripped the sword and slashed horizontally towards Tuoba Ching with enough power to slash apart the heavens. Tuoba Ching's gaze became cold as she used her full strength. An even greater power flowed out as her sword gave off terrifying power as it slashed toward Zhao Fu. Boom! The two swords gave off shocking power as they collided, resulting in a massive explosion. A shock wave spread out like a wave of light, and the ground in the surrounding 1,000 meters instantly collapsed. Boom! Boom! Booming sounds rang out continuously as the two of them engaged in an intense battle. Countless sword lights slashed out and collided, causing gusts of violent wind to wreak havoc in the surroundings. Sand and rocks were sent flying, and trees were destroyed. It was as if a catastrophe had descended. Kacha! Zhao Fu gave a monstrous laugh as his sword gave off a massive wave of sword chi that seemed to cover the heavens and earth as it flooded towards Tuoba Ching, sending her flying hundreds of meters. A trace of blood leaked out of Tuoba Ching's mouth, and her expression became savage as she raised her hand, causing countless traces of blood-red chi to fly into the sky. The sky was torn apart as a massive, coarse hand containing boundless power stretched out and pressed down toward Zhao Fu. It was as if countless mountains were weighing down on Zhao Fu's body, instantly pressing Zhao Fu into the ground. The massive hand did not disappear, and it continued to press Zhao Fu into the ground, leaving a massive handprint in the ground. Rumble. The ground started to tremble as massive stone pillars rose up from the ground, giving off a sealing power. It was as if Tuoba Ching wanted to seal Zhao Fu. The blood-red light from the Chaos Imperial Star became even more intense, making it look like a blood-red sun. The cold and devilish aura became even stronger, and countless black and blood-red arcs of lightning continuously flashed below the massive hand. Shing! A clear sword hum sounded out as a shocking sword light slashed out, slashing the massive hand in half. Zhao Fu's body was covered in black and blood-red lightning as he struggled free, and he ferociously rushed at Tuoba Ching. Tuoba Ching raised her blood-red sword, causing countless traces of sword chi to flow out, forming a dragon of sword chi. Tuoba Ching slashed out, and the dragon roared as it gave off a boundless and sharp aura as it slammed toward Zhao Fu, seeming as if it could pierce through the sky. Zhao Fu did not feel any fear at all, and he gave a savage smile as he gripped his sword with both hands and slashed out with all of his strength. A massive sword light split the dragon of sword chi in half, and the massive sword light continued towards Tuoba Ching. Tuoba Ching once again stretched out her hand, causing a blood-red energy barrier to appear. The massive sword light slammed into it, causing cracking sounds to ring out and countless cracks to appear, but it was able to block Zhao Fu's attack. However, Zhao Fu's body suddenly blurred as he disappeared and reappeared behind Tuoba Ching, his sharp claws instantly piercing through the cracked energy barrier. Tuoba Ching was given a big fright, and even though she used her power to defend, she was still sent flying by Zhao Fu, causing her to cough up a mouthful of blood. After crashing to the ground, Tuoba Ching lightly laughed as she crawled up and said, "Husband, today I'll show you what the human race's power is. Today, I'll show you what the human race's power is." Suddenly, the heavens and earth once again fell silent as figures giving off peerless auras appeared. These figures were all illusory, and even though they were quite blurry, they all had different appearances and auras. There were men and women, old and young. After these illusory figures appeared, they stepped out and entered Tuoba Ching's body. Immediately, a monstrous power spread out from Tuoba Ching's body, and it was hundreds of times more terrifying than before. Even though Zhao Fu had lost consciousness, he could still feel a wave of terror. Arg! Zhao Fu continuously roared as he unleashed all of his power. The blood-red light that the Chaos Imperial Star gave off seemed to be corporeal, and it gave off world-destroying power. Boom! The Chaos Imperial Star sent down a brilliant pillar of light that landed on Zhao Fu's body. Countless black and blood-red arcs of lightning rampaged around him, causing the ground to continuously crumble as an even more powerful aura spread out from Zhao Fu's body. Suddenly, a figure appeared within the pillar of light, grabbed Zhao Fu's head, and smashed it against the ground. A massive explosion rang out, and the ground was lifted up by shock waves before collapsing into nothingness in midair. Dust scattered and a 1,000-meter-wide crater appeared on the ground. At the center of the crater, Tuoba Ching pressed Zhao Fu's head against the ground. A few traces of blood leaked out of Zhao Fu's head, and his aura became incredibly weak as he lay on the ground, completely powerless. Husband, with your strength, you were able to force me to use my human race's power. I can see your potential, and I acknowledge you. Chapter 799. After picking up Zhao Fu's dying body, Tuoba Ching stretched out her hand and placed it between Zhao Fu's eyebrows. A blood-red rune came out of Tuoba Ching's palm and entered between Zhao Fu's eyebrows, and a powerful wave of life force instantly healed Zhao Fu's injuries. Zhao Fu's horns and fangs gradually disappeared, and the Chaos Imperial Star once again disappeared, and everything returned to normal. At that moment, Zhao Fu's consciousness returned, and he weakly opened his eyes. Looking at Tuoba Ching in front of him, he was shocked at first, but when he saw the gentleness in her eyes, he relaxed and weakly called out, Lil Qing. Tuoba Qing lightly smiled and nodded, revealing that warm smile from before, and she said apologetically, "I'm sorry, husband. I just recovered my memories, and I didn't think that I would become your woman or do those shameful things with you. So I wanted to kill you and was a bit heavy-handed." Zhao Fu didn't quite understand Tuoba Qing's current state, and his mind was in chaos. Tuoba Qing seemed to have returned to her original appearance, but he understood what she had just done. Hearing her apologetic tone, Zhao Fu could only bitterly smile. The Origin race's power was not something he could resist, and he understood why the Golden Dragon viewed the Origin race with such great importance and fear. "Husband, are you not going to forgive me?" Seeing Zhao Fu bitterly smile, Tuoba Qing felt quite apologetic and blamed herself. She had not been able to control that state just then, and she had indeed become a completely different person. Zhao Fu lightly smiled and shook his head, saying, "I was just beaten up by you. I can accept that." Tuoba Qing's face became slightly red, and she smiled at Zhao Fu before thinking of something and saying, "Husband, I've planted an origin mark in your body so that you'll have a chance of obtaining an origin bloodline. I'll leave an origin mark in your body so that you'll have a chance of controlling an origin bloodline. Also, I'll be leaving now, so make sure to take care of Wu Qian and the others." Hearing this, Zhao Fu somewhat expected this, but he couldn't help but ask, "Do you really have to leave?" Tuoba Qing lightly nodded and said, "I've fully recovered my memories, and thank you for helping me repair the desolate blood mask. If I continue to stay here, some people will notice this place and bring disaster to the human world, so I have to leave. At the same time, I also want to leave. There are many things that I need to do after I recover my memories, and I want to find a way to recover my strength. Right now, my strength is less than 1% of before, so I need to recover as quickly as possible." However, thinking about Tuoba Qing, who was about to leave, Zhao Fu couldn't help but sigh sorrowfully. Tuoba Qing shyly kissed Zhao Fu on the cheek and comforted him, saying, "Husband, if we have the chance, we'll meet again in the future. If you're strong enough, I'll stay by your side. So make sure you continue to work hard." Zhao Fu could only bitterly smile and nod before saying goodbye to Tuoba Qing. He waved his hand, causing the space around him to tear apart like a piece of paper, and Tuoba Qing disappeared, leaving Zhao Fu standing there. The Golden Dragon looked at Tuoba Qing as she left and couldn't help but exclaim in delight, "Zhao Fu, you've hit the jackpot." Back then, even my Heaven Murder Empire's Imperial clan was unable to obtain such a mark. Zhao Fu felt quite surprised and asked, "Is an origin mark that important?" The Golden Dragon giggled as he replied, "Of course, it's something that countless top-tier people dream of obtaining. With it, it's possible to advance to an origin bloodline. Normally, sacred heavenly bloodlines are the limit of all races, and they can't advance to an origin bloodline until they die of old age. However, the origin mark is extremely important to the origin race, as it is one of their origins. Moreover, they can only split it once and give it to someone else." You saw it too, right? In front of the origin race's power, a sacred heavenly bloodline is like a 3-year-old child, and a sovereign bloodline is trash. Thinking about that power that could cause one to despair, Zhao Fu could not help but sigh. Back then, even though he had given his body to the Chaos Imperial Star to maximize its power, he had still been instantly killed by Tuoba Qing, who had used her human race's power. By now, the other generals had arrived. They had not been able to get close to the terrifying shockwaves, and only after the battle had calmed down did they hurry over. Seeing the devastation, they were naturally incredibly shocked and worried. However, seeing that Zhao Fu was fine, they let out a sigh of relief. Wang Jian stepped forwards and cupped his hands as he asked caringly, "Your Majesty, are you all right? Are you all right? Are your injuries serious?" Also, Concubine Qing. Zhao Fu turned to look at the other generals and lightly shook his head as he said, "I'm fine." Also, Concubine Qing's matter is a secret of Qin City, and no one is allowed to talk about her. Anyone who disobeys will be severely punished. Now, Zhao Fu understood how dangerous Tuoba Qing's identity was, so he naturally had to keep her identity a secret in order to avoid any unnecessary trouble. At that moment, another commander came to report that a few legatees wanted to see Zhao Fu. They had sensed the increasingly terrifying aura coming from Qin City, and they thought that something big had happened. As such, they hurried over, but when they flew over the Great Wall, they were stopped by the generals. Now that everything had been dealt with, they were a bit late. Zhao Fu nodded and ordered people to bring them to the Qin Palace. Seeing the majestic palace, the legatees could not help but feel shocked. They were still very far away from establishing a kingdom, so it was impossible for them to do so. Now that Qin City had established a palace, didn't that mean that they were going to establish a kingdom? Thinking about this, they became even more shocked. After coming to the Grand Palace, Zhao Fu's face was pale as he asked, "What is it?" Seeing how pale and weak Zhao Fu's face was, Tina Pendragon was even more certain that something had happened in Great Qin, and she asked, "Great Qin's legatee?" Tina Pendragon asked, "Emperor, what was that abnormal sign just then?" Of course, Zhao Fu could not tell them, so he only smiled and replied that it was just a small incident. Of course, the legatees did not believe him. The closer they got to Qin City, the more they could sense that destructive power, causing their hearts to tremble. If it wasn't for the fact that it could cause great harm to the human world, they would not have dared to get any closer. However, it seemed that Qin City had resolved the situation, and if Zhao Fu did not want to say anything, they could not force him. In the end, they could only leave. At that moment, they observed Qin City's strength, and they were quite shocked. Qin City was indeed about to establish a kingdom, and Qin City would be the first kingdom in the human world. Chapter 800. A few days later, the spring wind blew, and the sun was warm. The surroundings were filled with greenery, and it was now March. Spring had arrived in the Legacy Land. Zhao Fu had fully recovered from his injuries, and he had ordered people to refine the corpses of the generals. Zhao Fu gave the innate talent blood crystals to the people who had been with him for the longest time: Zhangde, Xiao Jian, Daisy, and Old Logue. He would also give them Sar, Doke, and Chunman's corpses after he obtained them. Now, Qin controlled 160 regions, including 1,112 great cities, 30 cities, 240 towns, and 22,489 villages. The total population had reached 570 million or so, and there were 80 million soldiers. There were 60 million Stage 1 soldiers, too. 2 million Stage 2 soldiers, 200,000 Stage 3 soldiers, 8,000 Stage 4 soldiers, and all of the generals had reached Stage 5. With Qin's current strength, Zhao Fu felt that it was time to do something. Before, Zhao Fu had been hesitant because the alliance was too powerful, but now, Zhao Fu felt that Qin's strength was enough. However, he still had to prepare for defense. If Qin showed his fangs again, he would attract too many enemies, so defense was the most important thing for Qin. Qin City was already a level 4 capital city, and it was only 2 levels away from establishing a kingdom. As such, Zhao Fu had to speed things up. He wanted to establish a kingdom as soon as possible so that the Qin Empire could once again appear in the world. Within the palace, all of the generals and ministers stood in rows on either side. There was a red carpet in the middle, and everything was made of ancient materials. Zhao Fu sat on his throne and gave off the aura of a king as he looked down at everyone and asked, "What do you all think about this battle?" Wei Liao stood out and smiled as he said, "Your Majesty, this minister has some thoughts. This time, Qin's target shouldn't be the cities near Qin City, but the cities further away. There are a few benefits to doing this. First, to maintain Qin's friendly image to the neighboring cities. The cities that had diplomatic relations with Qin would continue to treat them as friends. Secondly, Qin's powerful attack had undoubtedly put a great deal of pressure on many cities. If they saw Qin's current strength, they would probably choose to submit again. Thirdly, the regions that were attacked by Qin would definitely feel threatened and attack Qin on a large scale. There were many cities around Qin that had a good relationship with Qin. They would definitely attack these cities first. These cities only had two choices. One was to submit to Qin, and the other was to join the enemy. In fact, both choices were beneficial to Qin. First, it was best to join Qin. Second, if they wanted to join the enemy, and Qin treated them so well, if they chose to betray him, Qin could attack them from a righteous position. Hearing this, Zhao Fu thought about it seriously, nodded, and asked, "Does anyone have a different opinion on General Wei's tactics?" The generals and ministers all agreed with Wei Liao's tactics. At that moment, Wang Jian stepped out and cupped his hands as he said, "Your Majesty, this subordinate has some suggestions. With Great Qin's current strength, it's still too weak to face the entire northern side. Even though we don't know how many cities will retaliate against us, it seems that we should prepare for the worst-case scenario." Zhao Fu looked at Great Qin and said, "This subordinate has some suggestions. Therefore, this subordinate doesn't support General Wei's view. This subordinate's idea is to conceal their identities and eliminate them one by one. We can also use General Wei's strategy of distant enemy, close friend. We must first construct a large number of transmission arrays and prepare everything. Then, we can quietly erase the regions one by one. We can't do too many of them, or else we'll attract the attention of countless cities. At the same time, it's best to choose regions that are far away to reduce the danger." After hearing Wang Jian's suggestion, Zhao Fu couldn't help but nod. Even though this method was more time-consuming and troublesome, and it wasn't as fast as Wei Liao's method, it was the safest and most careful method. "Your Majesty, when the two generals' tactics are exposed, Qin's defense is the most important thing. Once many cities attack, and Qin isn't prepared, they'll definitely break through." Sun Hanxiang said as she bowed. Zhao Fu replied seriously, "I know. I'll order people to set up large amounts of traps and defensive formations." "What do you think of the two generals' tactics?" This time, everyone fell silent and started to think about the pros and cons of the two tactics. Zhao Fu also seriously thought about the two tactics. Bai Qi, dressed in white, stepped forwards and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, this general feels that we can combine the two generals' tactics and make up for each other's weaknesses. I feel that we can combine the two generals' tactics to make up for each other's weaknesses. General Wei's tactic is fast and can bring Great Qin the most benefits in a short period of time, but it's too dangerous. General Wang's tactic is safe and cautious, but its weakness is that it's slow and can be detected by some smart people. Great Qin is currently facing 3 cities. We can choose one direction and use General Wei's strategy to launch a sudden attack, and we can use Wang Jian's method to attack the remaining 2 directions. This will greatly reduce the pressure on Qin, and it will also reduce suspicions. After all, Qin is currently fighting with other factions, so he naturally doesn't have the time or energy to attack the other 2 directions. Qin can also spread the news and frame the other factions. At the same time, they would be able to reap benefits and rid themselves of suspicion. In fact, they would even be able to help the cities in both directions and deepen their relationship. That way, Great Qin would be able to focus on one direction. Zhao Fu couldn't help but laugh. This tactic was quite sinister, and he had never thought that Bai Qi would come up with such a tactic. However, anything that could kill enemies and win was a good tactic. After thinking about it for a while, Zhao Fu asked the others if there was anything they could add to Bai Qi's tactic. Following this, Zhao Fu decided to use Bai Qi's tactic. After making preparations, Qin didn't hide his identity and made sure everyone knew that it was Qin. Zhao Fu was attacking towards the east because the factions in that direction were stronger. They would be a tough nut to crack in the future, so it was best to deal with them as soon as possible. This time, Zhao Fu didn't send out his entire army, and he only planned to send out 800 city lords. In order to ensure safety, there were 20 city lords in a team. They were going to be a blitzkrieg, and they were going to construct a large number of teleportation channels to relocate a large number of people. This would take up a lot of time, and it would be good for Qin to let them know that it was Qin who had done this. Firstly, it would show off Qin's strength. Of course, this wasn't Qin's true strength, as he hadn't released the Wyverns and Corpse Soul Commanders yet. Secondly, it would be a cover for the other two sides to keep a low profile. Chapter 801. Bang! A massive explosion sounded out as a ray of light tore through the sky and shot into a city hall. A suffocating aura exploded out, and the city lord was immediately woken up. He rushed out of the room and looked at the terrifying figure in the sky with a serious expression. "I am Qin's legatee. Are you willing to submit to Qin?" The figure in the sky said in a dignified and domineering voice that could be heard throughout the entire city. Moreover, a powerful might weighed down on the city lord's body, causing him to feel quite shocked. He used his city lord seal's power, but his body still sank. He felt as if he was standing in front of a massive wave, and he couldn't help but tremble and feel powerless. As the region passageways opened, the hundreds of regions nearby heard Qin's name the most. He had risen to power and possessed terrifying power. Ordinary people were not a match for him at all, and countless factions feared him. However, Qin's policies had greatly weakened the enmity everyone felt towards him, causing everyone to look down on him and lower the danger he posed. This person in front of him was Qin's legatee. He had actually come to subdue him. His power was indeed monstrous, as expected from the supreme ruler of Qin. Under Zhao Fu's terrifying aura, the city lord knew that he wouldn't be able to defend against a single attack, so he didn't think too much. The city lord knelt on one knee and yelled, "Luanwu City is willing to submit to Qin." Now that Zhao Fu had come, the city lord knew that he wasn't a match for Zhao Fu. He didn't want to die, so he could only choose to submit. Joining Qin was indeed a good choice. They would no longer have to worry about natural disasters or man-made disasters. Great Qin had purposefully announced the benefits of joining Great Qin, and many people now knew about it. Great Qin had also invited many city lords to personally go and take a look, giving them enough confidence. "What's your name?" Zhao Fu asked as he looked at the young man in front of him with his terrifying eyes. The city lord immediately replied respectfully, "This lowly one is called Zhang Quan." "Good, Zhang Quan. Follow me and continue to subdue the city lord. Later, Qin's people will come to take over your city." After Zhao Fu gave his instructions, he turned into a beam of light and shot into the sky. Zhang Quan's face lit up. Now that he had submitted to Qin, if he could be valued by him, his status in the future would naturally not be low. So he also turned into a beam of light and followed Zhao Fu. This wasn't a blitzkrieg, so they didn't lack time. As such, they had to first ask if they wanted to surrender. If they surrendered, they would be able to take over a system main city without any resistance. If they killed the city lord, the resistance would be quite intense. Boom! Another loud sound rang out as two terrifying auras descended on the city lord's mansion. The terrifying auras were like a huge boulder that pressed down on everyone's hearts. The entire city fell into a deathly silence. The city lord was a 50 to 60-year-old man, and he was also woken up. He hurriedly took out his weapon and rushed out, looking at the two powerful figures in the sky. "I am Qin's legatee. I ask you if you are willing to submit to Qin." Zhao Fu once again repeated what he had just said, his voice filled with might and domineeringness. He gave off a cold aura that seemed to indicate that those who submitted would live and those who opposed would die. The city lord wasn't too surprised and chose to surrender. He then followed Zhao Fu to the third city and once again gave off a terrifying aura as he descended into the city lord's mansion. A wild-looking young man holding a large saber rushed out of the room and yelled, "Who are you? How dare you so impudently appear in my dark-roamed city?" This time, Zhao Fu didn't say anything. Now that he had two followers with him, if he did this himself, it would be too degrading. Beside him, Zhang Quan coldly harumphed and said, "This is Qin's legatee. You only have two choices, submit or die." "Ha ha!" The wild-looking young man loudly laughed as he said, "I won't submit to anyone. Piss off. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Zhang Quan and Li Fu, the second elder who had surrendered, had cold gazes and wanted to act on Zhao Fu's behalf. This was an excellent opportunity to show off. This person was a king, and they had to act on his behalf to deal with such a minor figure. However, Zhao Fu didn't want to go through too much trouble, so he suddenly acted first. The Qin seal within his body slightly trembled, and a massive wave of power gathered at his fingertip. He pointed at the wild-looking young man, and a black wave of energy containing shocking power shot towards the wild-looking young man. Sensing this massive power, the wild-looking young man's expression fell, and he exploded out with a powerful aura. Traces of aura flowed out, forming a 10 or so meter long black panther that roared and leapt towards the black energy. Bang! The black energy pierced through the ferocious black panther, causing it to dissipate into countless traces of aura. However, the black energy was greatly weakened, and the wild-looking young man slashed out with his saber, slashing the black energy in half and dissipating. After being blocked, the wild-looking young man loudly laughed and mockingly looked at Zhao Fu. Zhang Quan and Li Fu were quite surprised to find that the wild-looking young man was not weak at all, and he was even slightly stronger than the two of them. Facing the wild-looking young man's provocation, Zhao Fu smiled condescendingly and suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed at the air. The wild-looking young man felt as if he had been grabbed by a massive, formless hand, and he immediately roared as he started to struggle. However, Zhao Fu lightly twisted his hand, causing the wild-looking young man to howl. His body was twisted like a fried dough twist, and blood flowed out of his skin. Some of the blood flowed out of his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and the wild-looking young man was dead. Even though Zhang Quan and Li Fu had long since prepared themselves that with Zhao Fu's power, he would be able to easily kill the wild-looking young man. Seeing him die in such a pitiful manner was quite terrifying. If they hadn't chosen to submit, this would have been their outcome. They would have been crushed like ants. "Your Majesty, what should we do now?" As the city lord died, a large number of soldiers hurried over, and Zhang Quan's attitude became even more respectful than before. Zhao Fu glanced at the soldiers furiously charging over and said calmly, "Relocate the system main cities. There will be people to deal with them later." There would definitely be city lords who would resist, and it was impossible for all of them to surrender. Zhao Fu had long since expected this, so he had made preparations. Stage 2 and Stage 3 soldiers would soon arrive to suppress them. Zhao Fu did not choose to use Stage 1 soldiers, and he instead used even more powerful martial power to suppress them. This was the best method, because this would cause people to feel more despair. They would be able to resist less, allowing more people to submit. Zhao Fu's side progressed quite smoothly, and he easily obtained 9 system main cities. However, Zhao Fu did not stop there, and he continued to fearlessly attack. The other groups were also progressing quite well, and powerful auras descended. 20 city lords descended on system main cities, and their auras were not any weaker than those of Zhao Fu's. Moreover, they gave off an even more oppressive feeling, making people feel even more fear. Cities either submitted or were destroyed, and the female city lords were forcefully subdued and brought back to Qin City. Chapter 802. After Qin took control of 40 regions, the 800 city lords gathered into 4 teams, each led by a general. They continued to savagely conquer the surrounding regions, and in the blink of an eye, they had conquered 62 regions. By now, it was quite dangerous because news of this would quickly spread, and countless city lords would quickly gather. When that time came, city lords would retaliate against Qin's city lord. The Eastern faction's city lords had never thought that Qin would suddenly attack and send out 800 city lords. This was equivalent to 200 or so region city lords. Even though many of the city lords had reacted in time, and some were near the regions that Qin had conquered and some were Qin's next targets, they were unable to stop Qin's barbaric expansion. They could only retreat strategically, but only a few of the cities that were quite far away were able to escape. As for the other cities, unless the city lords directly relocated their cities and did not bring any residents or soldiers with them, there would not be any problems. However, it was completely impossible to bring the residents and soldiers. After all, there were 400,000 to 500,000 residents, and how could they teleport all of them in a short period of time? Because all of Qin's city lords were incredibly powerful, their numbers were quite small, but they were more agile and fast. Often, just as these city lords were about to relocate, Qin's side would arrive, or before half of the residents had been teleported away, Qin would arrive. Under the immense pressure and the possibility of a large number of soldiers and civilians dying, most city lords could only surrender. Some city lords hardened their hearts and abandoned their soldiers and residents to escape by themselves, causing the soldiers' and residents' loyalty to plummet. Their resistance would become much weaker, and it would be easy for Qin to take them in. Time became quite tense and serious, and Qin fearlessly continued to conquer regions. Countless system city lords continuously hurried over, hoping to join forces to resist Qin. By now, Qin had already taken control of 84 regions, and he could not help but stop. There were too many city lords gathered, and Qin could not continue to wildly expand. As such, he could only stop and quickly digest them. Both sides exuded a terrifying aura as they confronted each other. Neither side dared to make the first move. The other side had many city lords, but they had 100 or so more city lords than Qin's side. Since Qin's side had stopped moving, they did not dare to directly attack, as there would be too many casualties. No one wanted to have too many casualties, so they wanted more city lords to come and suppress Qin's side. Fortunately, on Qin's side, there were a lot of preparations. They were secretly digesting the areas under their control. Countless teleportation formations were crazily sending people to Qin. Zhao Fu fully unleashed his senses, and as more and more city lords gathered, he could only give the order to retreat and give up on some of the regions that he had yet to digest. Otherwise, if these system main cities attacked Qin's side would suffer great losses. After all, the other side greatly outnumbered Qin's side, and more city lords were arriving. Moreover, most of the city lords in Qin's side were quite ordinary. He did not have general stars like Bai Qi, Wang Jian, or Wei Liao, nor did he have the power of a legatee. The only advantage he had was his talisman equipment. However, if the two sides fought, because of their overwhelming numbers, Qin would definitely lose. Moreover, Qin had already digested 80% of the 84 regions, which was already enough. He could not allow this to continue. As Qin retreated, the system main cities let out a sigh of relief. Some city lords even wanted to chase after Qin, but there were simply too few of them. If they sent a small number of city lords, they would just be sending themselves to their deaths, so they could only give up. Qin's sudden actions caused the northern side of the Midland continent to not be peaceful for an entire night, and all of the factions were woken up. Qin, who had been silent for so long, was like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, instantly devouring 80 or so regions. Not only did this make the northern side's factions feel insecure, but the situation in China also became tense and oppressive. It was already quite good for many factions to take over a region or 2 or 3 regions, and only the most powerful factions would be able to do such a thing. However, compared to Qin, they were indeed quite weak. 800 city lords at once was quite shocking, and many people felt quite terrified. After all, the Great Xia dynasty, which was one of China's legatees, only had 100 city lords. Compared to Qin, there was a difference of 7 or 8 times. Moreover, this was only the strength that Qin had displayed. Who knew if he was still hiding anything? As Qin moved, the situation in China once again changed, and undercurrents started to flow. This was because the slumbering evil dragon once again opened its ferocious eyes and revealed its terrifying fangs, revealing its incredibly dangerous power. It was as if an evil dragon had been born, and the world was about to descend into chaos. No one would be able to live in peace. There was nothing they could do. The threat that Qin had displayed was simply too great, making countless people feel quite unsettled. They were forced to take all sorts of measures to defend against the harm that Qin could cause. The other kingdoms in the Midland continent also heard about Qin suddenly destroying 80 or so regions, and they all took this matter seriously. At the same time, they guessed at Qin's goal and made plans. The sky had just brightened, and the air was fresh and cool. The eastern factions of Qin's main goal was to resist Qin's barbaric invasion, and they immediately called back a meeting. They listed Qin as a bloody, barbaric, and evil person, and they invited the various factions to punish Qin. In order to attract more factions, everyone was allowed to participate in this meeting. Whether it was indigenous residents, players, or even outlanders, they could all gather here to discuss how to get rid of Qin. In just an instant, an anti-Qin storm swept through the Midland continent. In response, Qin's minister Li Si personally came out and confirmed that it was the eastern factions who had deliberately harmed Qin and that they had never been on good terms with Qin. Qin was doing this for his own safety, and the heavens could see that he was doing this for justice. Please do not believe these sinister and cunning people. Have you ever seen Qin attack a city that he was on good terms with? Qin's cities all treated him with respect and gave him many resources. There was no need for Qin to say this. You could go to any of the cities near Qin cities to prove that what Qin said was true or false. Qin was willing to live in peace with all of you, and do not believe the lies made up by evil people, saying that great Qin was ruthless, bloodthirsty, evil, and barbaric was simply slander and ridiculous. If anyone really believed such ridiculous words, they would be an idiot and ignorant person. Chapter 803. The cities that had received Qin's help many times couldn't help but cry out for Qin. This proved that Qin had always been friendly to them and had never forced them by force. Those city lords who joined Qin all did so voluntarily. Now, natural disasters are frequent, and the resources of the cities are consumed too much. Qin has always been helping us. Qin is absolutely righteous and kind. Those who say that Qin is cruel, bloodthirsty, evil, and barbaric definitely don't know Qin's true character. At this moment, it is like a fairyland. Natural disasters and man-made disasters are frequent outside, but Qin is surrounded by birds and flowers. The people are living a healthy and prosperous life, and there are no man-made disasters. It is peaceful, which proves that Qin is not a violent person. Otherwise, how could the people be so happy? Such a good force should be slandered like this. As ordinary people, we can't stand it. Are those who slander Qin blind? How dare they say such ridiculous words? I will prove Qin's innocence. Among those who proved Qin's innocence, the cities that shouted the loudest and reacted the most fiercely had secretly decided to join Qin. It was Qin's idea to say such words. After all, the other cities had also received help from Qin, and Qin didn't hurt them. So, they all stood up to echo him. Even though it was just a simple response, the reaction was massive, and it created an image of great Qin as a kind, friendly, and peaceful nation. It was a stark contrast to those who said that great Qin was cruel, bloodthirsty, evil, and barbaric. Originally, Qin's unscrupulous and barbaric expansion had made countless cities feel threatened. They almost wanted to unite to destroy Qin. It seemed that Qin had reached the point where everyone wanted to kill him. But at this moment, the situation was reversed in an instant. Some people said that Qin was cruel and bloodthirsty, while others said that Qin was peaceful and friendly. The two views collided, and no one wanted to kill Qin. At this time, the city lords of the cities that had been captured by Qin stood up and announced in a high-profile manner that they had secretly planned to kill Qin. Now, they had been subdued by Qin and were willing to serve Qin. Qin didn't blame us at all. He treated us well in all aspects and treated us as his family. You said all kinds of bad things about Qin. We also felt wrong for Qin. Justice should be upheld. It was us who were wrong. As soon as these words were spoken, many factions were shaken. Now, the city lords of the conquered regions had personally come to prove that Qin was innocent. Moreover, even though others wanted to harm him, he still chose to be friendly to those who harmed him. He chose to use virtue to convince the masses and treat people peacefully. What a noble character. Immediately, the public opinion in the north of the mainland was on Qin's side. They thought that Qin was kind and peaceful. Qin hadn't launched a war against a foreign country for a long time. Now, he suddenly went to such a faraway place to attack others. There must be something hidden. Moreover, he hadn't even cleared out the nearby cities. Why would he attack other places? This was really unnecessary, and they couldn't understand why. Most of the city lords in the east didn't know the truth. They only knew that Qin was attacking, so they immediately joined forces and chose to resist Qin together. However, they didn't expect things to change like this. One side said that Qin was evil, while the other side said that Qin was kind. Now, it was obvious that Qin was kind because there was all kinds of evidence to prove it. If it was really those city lords who conspired to harm Qin first, then they deserved to be destroyed by Qin. As long as Qin didn't continue to attack, they didn't need to risk their lives to fight against Qin. As such, the city lords who had been fighting against Qin collapsed in a short while, and the city lords left one after another. The city lords who came out to prove that Qin was kind had already submitted to Qin, so they naturally listened to Qin's orders. It wasn't a problem for them to make false testimonies for Qin. Moreover, Zhao Fu didn't show up at all. Everything was handled by Li Si. Even if he was found out, he could push all the blame to Li Si. This was just a small trick of the regime. It was obvious that Qin Sheng was an evil, violent, and barbaric guy, but he dared to say that he was kind and friendly so openly and shamelessly. This made many city lords who knew the truth so angry that they wanted to die. For example, some city lords who escaped from the areas that Qin attacked and conquered stood out to prove that they didn't have the intention to plot against Qin and that everything was framed by Qin. It was clear that Qin had deliberately invaded. This kind of method was really shameless, and they didn't dare to admit it. In response, Qin harshly retorted that Qin definitely didn't have any intention of attacking these cities. If Qin had come, it would have been because they were afraid that they would run away and cause countless residents to lose their support. They were cowardly and irresponsible people. Both sides started to argue, but neither side sent out troops. In actuality, Zhao Fu had long since made preparations and had sent a large number of soldiers to defend the Great Wall, waiting for them to attack. However, they didn't dare to come. This was because they didn't have enough people. They only had 400 city lords and 40 million soldiers. They understood that they weren't a match for Qin, so they naturally wouldn't attack. Now, they couldn't stand on the side of justice and cause even more city lords to join forces against them. Qin's actions made them feel incredibly furious. He had turned black into white and the dead into alive. He was simply too shameless. They were furious, but they couldn't do anything about it. The player factions all knew that this was just Qin's strategy. They knew Qin's true nature. As from the very beginning, Qin was a synonym for ruthlessness and evil. However, even though they knew this, they didn't dare to do anything. After all, with Qin's strength, it would already be good if he didn't make trouble for them. If they dared to make trouble for him, they would be destroyed by Qin at any moment. Everyone knew what was going on, but they could only pretend that they didn't know. This was how powerful Qin was. Qin's gains this time were simply shocking. He had obtained 240 cities, 22 million stage 1 soldiers, and 110 million residents. His level 4 capital city only lacked a bit of EXP to level up into a level 5 capital city. His strength had once again increased by a monstrous amount. Since there were no battles, Qin once again kept a low profile and properly digested this power. As for the other two factions, he could only delay them for a bit. Now that he had some free time, Zhao Fu once again returned to the real world to take care of some matters. He found out that the Great Ming Dynasty and Great Song Dynasty had allied together to destroy the White Lotus Society. However, because the White Lotus Society was incredibly widespread and had deep roots, they could only heavily injure them each time and were unable to uproot them. Chapter 804. Zhao Fu thought about it for a while before agreeing. After all, they still had a lot of value. Even though Zhao Fu wanted to uproot them, with Zhao Fu's current state of mind and vision, he was no longer limited to the legacy land. His way of thinking had greatly changed. He did not care too much about the White Lotus Society. Zhao Fu could destroy them at any time. Now that he was offering them protection, it would be quite good to use them to annoy others. Moreover, they had provided a lot of information before, but now that Qin was working with Flower Moon, he no longer needed the White Lotus Society. However, offering them protection was a form of compensation. As long as others did not let him down, Zhao Fu did not want to let them down either. As such, he would give them some face. Zhao Fu then chatted with the class president of his university. His development had been quite rapid, and he had become the leader of 20,000 people in the blink of an eye. Zhao Fu had not helped him much and had only provided him with some resources. His current achievements were all due to his own abilities. The real world was becoming more and more chaotic, and ordinary people could sense that something was off. Even though there were many people trying to explain things, the situation was becoming worse and worse. It was only a matter of time before the real world collapsed. Zhao Fu could not help but think of a few people. Now that the outside world was so chaotic, he wondered if he should bring them to the Ying family and ask the Ying family to protect them. Most of these people had helped Zhao Fu before, and Zhao Fu did not want to see anything happen to them. As such, he made a list and gave it to his subordinates to invite them to the Ying family's territory. They would be protected. After returning to the Heaven Awakened world, Qin was still slowly digesting the massive number of people, buildings, and food. This was not something that could be solved in a short period of time, so Zhao Fu could only wait. Another week later, Qin had finally digested most of the people. The war between Qin and the Eastern factions was still incredibly intense. The Eastern factions accused Qin of being a shameless and cunning person, a hungry wolf in a noble disguise. Qin continued to refute harshly, proving that these Eastern forces were sinister and vicious villains. They slandered Qin in various ways, envied Qin's power, and wanted to kill Qin every day. At first, most people were willing to listen to the quarrel between the two sides. But as time went by, they didn't care about it anymore. They turned their attention to other things and didn't target Qin anymore. Now that the limelight had passed, people didn't care about it anymore. It could be said that by using this method to resolve a crisis, it could also resolve a war in which there were countless casualties and Qin did not have full confidence. In truth, Zhao Fu had been a bit disdainful of this sort of verbal warfare at the start. After all, he was more inclined towards a head-on confrontation. In a head-on confrontation, the victor would be king, and the weak would submit. However, there were simply too many enemies, and Zhao Fu did not have full confidence. If he could use this method to reduce the casualties of countless soldiers, Zhao Fu would be willing to do it. After all, Zhao Fu believed that soldiers' lives were the most important, and any method could be used. Zhao Fu also planned to find an opportunity to destroy the Eastern factions that were arguing with Qin. However, now was not a good time to do so, as it would attract too much attention, and Qin would not be able to explain himself. Right now, the most important thing was to carry out the second set of tactics. Zhao Fu first found the regions in the south and west where he could attack, and then secretly set up a large number of teleportation channels. This time, he had to be incredibly secretive and not allow any information to be leaked. Zhao Fu bought many intermediate isolation barriers and advanced isolation barriers from the outside world, making it so that ordinary teleportation channels were basically useless. At the same time, there were 400 city lords participating in this operation to prevent anything unexpected from happening. Of course, they could not devour too many regions at once, or else they would attract too much attention. As such, Zhao Fu planned to only devour one region a day. Taking advantage of the night, Qin headed to the region that he had chosen. The city lords were all wearing cloaks, concealing their auras, and 1 million Stage 2 soldiers were also prepared to clean up the mess. The people in this region still had not sensed the impending danger. This region was suffering from the snow disaster, and even though it was spring, the temperature was still incredibly cold. Everywhere was covered in ice and snow, and the four main cities found it difficult to defend against the natural disasters. There were no players within the main cities, as players were the source of the natural disasters. In order to defend against the natural disasters and reduce casualties and chaos, the main cities chased away the players, making some players quite displeased. In such cold weather, once one laid down on a warm bed, it was easy to fall asleep. At night, the four main cities fell silent. Suddenly, powerful auras exploded out, causing countless people to wake up from their dreams. When they opened their eyes, many people felt as if there was a massive boulder weighing down on their bodies. This was the might of 100 city lords working together, and it instantly suppressed countless people. Within the city hall, a middle-aged man with stubble held a weapon as he looked at the 100 mysterious black-cloaked figures in the sky with despair. He evidently did not have the strength to fight 100 people by himself, and facing such a powerful force, his first thought was that he was finished. At the same time, he felt quite confused. He did not know who these people were and why they had suddenly invaded his city. "Do you choose to surrender?" The cloaked figure in the lead asked the middle-aged man with stubble, giving off a powerful aura. The middle-aged man could only choose to submit, and he could not help but ask, "Who are you?" The person in the lead did not reply and only said that he would understand once he reached that place. This side was progressing quite smoothly, but the other side was not doing so well. One of the city lords chose to resist and was killed, and his soldiers and residents also vigorously resisted. Some people tried to escape through teleportation channels, but they found that they could not be used. Qin City activated a large number of isolation barriers, cutting off this region from the rest of the world, and the teleportation channels in this region also became useless. In the end, the 100 city lords forcefully suppressed this city, killing 60,000 Stage 1 soldiers and 100,000 or so residents. After suppressing this system main city, the 100 city lords did not do anything else, and they instead flew into the sky to sense their surroundings in order to prevent anything unexpected from happening. Following this, Qin City's soldiers hurried over and transported these people back to Qin City. They then started to clean up the blood and corpses, as well as any traces of people having been here. After waking up that night, the region became completely peaceful. All of the residents of the four main cities had disappeared, and there was not a single sound. Because there were no players here, and indigenous residents rarely used teleportation channels to go to other places, no one had noticed anything strange about this region. Chapter 805. The most important thing was to be careful, so Zhao Fu was not in a hurry. He continued to attack one region a day, attacking the western side and then the southern side. Of course, on the surface, he was still fighting against the eastern side, and the smell of gunpowder was quite intense. Both sides didn't show any signs of weakness at all. They were full of confidence, awe-inspiring righteousness, and sternly refuted each other. They portrayed a truly cunning and sinister person to the fullest, with one set in the open and another set in the dark. 7 or 8 days after the incident, there were still people who noticed the supernatural incident. Suddenly, everyone disappeared in one night. There was no sound at all, and there were no signs at all. A few million people had disappeared like ghosts. However, not many people knew about this, and it did not attract much attention. A few days later, Qin City successfully leveled up to a level 5 capital city. This made Zhao Fu feel quite delighted, as it was only one level away from becoming a level 6 capital city. After that, it would become a royal city, and Qin City would be able to officially establish a kingdom. Zhao Fu went to the city hall and saw the powerful stats of a level 5 capital city. Village name, Qin City, epic, level 5 capital city village area. 229,400 square kilometers village territory. 12421,800 square kilometers popular support. 86 special stats. Territory crop output plus 240%. Territory crop growth time minus 240%. Population limit plus 155%. resident stats plus 18, soldier stats plus 19%, population attraction plus 180%, high-grade attraction plus 180%. Subsidiary village limit, 246,930 subordinate villages. Logue Village, Jean Village, Doran Village, Leaf Family Village, Wolf Village, Ferocious Tiger Village. Leveling up from a level 5 capital city to a level 6 capital city required even more EXP, which was 800 million EXP. An ordinary person would not be able to obtain such a massive amount of EXP in their lifetime, and 800 million EXP was enough to instantly turn countless towns into cities. If it wasn't for the sake of establishing a kingdom, Zhao Fu would not spend so much EXP on leveling up a city. After all, leveling up countless towns would bring even greater benefits. However, Zhao Fu still chose to level up a capital city. After all, in the Heaven Awakened world, establishing a kingdom and not establishing a kingdom were two completely different things, and there was a massive difference between them. After establishing a kingdom, one's various abilities would be unlocked. It was not something that a faction without a kingdom could compare to. Now, Qin was one level away from establishing a country. Needless to say, they would naturally know when the country was established. The power and strength of a country were absolutely terrifying and shocking. 800 million EXP was not something that could be gathered in a short period of time, and it would take a lot of time. Right now, Great Qin was still devouring a region every day. A month later, this supernatural incident finally caused panic. Regions of people had disappeared without any warning, leaving behind ghost cities. There was no blood or corpses, and it was incredibly strange. Countless people could not understand what was going on. These areas were mainly distributed in the south and west. Occasionally, an area would disappear in the east. However, there was no connection between the areas that disappeared, and they were quite far away. News of the northern continent's supernatural incidents quickly spread throughout all of China, and it became the hottest topic on the Heaven Awakened World Forum. They could not understand just what had happened and where the residents and soldiers had gone. There were no signs of battle, nor were there any blood or corpses. It was as if those people had evaporated into thin air. Since the beginning of this situation, 42 regions had mysteriously disappeared. The disappearance of so many regions was no small matter. Everyone continued to speculate. Some people guessed that it was Great Qin who had done this. After all, pushing all of the abnormal signs onto Great Qin was not wrong, so they could only guess. However, there was no evidence, so they could only guess. Others said, "Don't put everything on Qin. Right now, Qin is tangling with the Eastern factions, so how could he have the time to do something like this? I think it's the work of a faction from another world that has infiltrated China." I think so too. Right now, Qin is facing off against the Eastern factions, so he wouldn't be so stupid as to challenge 3 factions at once. That would be too much pressure, and I think it's because of some strange natural disaster. For example, the Disaster Festival's death disaster was similar to this. Now that all sorts of natural disasters had appeared, it was possible that the death disaster would appear as well. Everyone made their own guesses as to why this was happening, and they all had their own reasons. Now that countless people were paying attention to this, it made it even more difficult for Qin to do what he wanted. Now that things had become so big, the various factions became incredibly wary. It was not good for Qin to act, as it was possible that he would be discovered. As such, he could only give up on this tactic. However, he had obtained another 120 cities this time, and even though it had taken him a lot of time and effort, it was still worth it. This matter definitely could not be leaked, because once it was leaked, Qin's plan would be completely exposed, and he would be attacked by countless factions. This matter had become quite big, and it was possible that more than half of the factions in the northern side of the Midland continent would participate in destroying Qin. As such, Zhao Fu did not dare to do anything. Although Qin had given up on this tactic, strange things had happened in other continents, and it was not just Qin who had been threatened by the system factions. It seemed that many people knew the truth and did not expose him. Instead, they learned this tactic to obtain greater benefits. The various factions in China were now on guard and could not continue using this tactic. However, the other continent's city lords did not know about this, so the plan was quite successful. This caused countless people to panic, and the higher-ups of the various factions understood what was going on. Most of the ordinary people were panicking, and just like that, Qin's suspicions were cleared. This made Zhao Fu feel quite speechless. Zhao Fu did not plan to let things end like this, and he ordered his people to continue attacking a region as he yelled, "Those who don't submit to Qin will die." Following this, they took down 2 cities and killed some people. However, the surrounding city lords reacted incredibly quickly and rushed to the region where the attacks had taken place. There were many players in this region, so news of them being attacked quickly spread. Everyone was shocked to find that the culprit behind all of this was Qin. However, they were quickly rebutted, and they scoffed at this, saying, "Are you all idiots? Why did you shout out Qin's name when Qin attacked? Aren't you saying that Qin did it? Do you really think that Qin would be such an idiot? It's definitely someone trying to frame him." At that moment, Qin furiously stood up, acting as if he was a righteous and kind-hearted person who had been greatly humiliated. He started to criticize the Eastern factions and shamelessly announced that it was the Eastern factions who had framed Qin. Everyone, think about it. Who has enmity with Qin? Only the Eastern factions can do such a thing. These despicable and insidious people dare to slander Qin and humiliate Qin's reputation. If they don't give Qin an explanation, they will definitely attack and use their blood to prove Qin's reputation. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.